Jason.
Wherever the red dot goes, you bang.
Jason belongs in hell, and I'm gonna see that he gets there. Wake up, middle of the night, screaming my brains out. Get high, middle of the afternoon. No way, can't stop thinking about you. It's just my nightmare, one lavish nightmare. You call me animal, that's just not the truth. I'm no animal, no animal with you, no animal. Whoa, I'm no animal, no animal with you, no ain't enough for you. Your best friend turned out to be your worst enemy. I know what you want. Neon Sunset Boulevard. It's just my nightmare, one lavish nightmare. You call me an animal, but that's just not the truth. I'm no animal, no animal with you, no animal. Whoa, I'm no animal, no animal with you, no If only pins could fly, Pins Biscuit style. CHH, take it to the Matthews Bridge. Can you feel it? Of this generation. Get up. Of this generation. Are you ready? Do you know where you are?
Alright, streamers, you know what time it is. Keep on pissing, baby.
All right, and we are live. Hello, everybody out there. Can you guys hear us? Are we coming through loud and clear? Let me see who's with us so far. Oh, my goodness.
Okay, I'm ready.
Hold on. Let me get my mask.
I'll do it like this, the way the idiots do it. Makes my ears look big, though.
Here, I've got my mask. Hold on. See, it's a Jason X mask.
Oh, that looks good. Very good.
Oh, geez. All right, loud. Okay, we're coming through loud and clear. Very nice. Let me give some shout outs here before we get started. Let's see who's with us so far here. Over on Twitch, we've got Kevin Smythe, Carpe Horror, and Big Crack Rock. What's up? How you guys doing tonight? Over on YouTube, we've got a lively chat going already. Captain Halloween, Al Suspiria, my buddy Dave Vanderhoff, Crystal Lake Counselor 1977, my buddy Chris, Christian Hanna, Jamie, Al Suspiria, DJ, Anthony Jordan, Christopher Glavin, The Daily Ghost, Logan, Devin. What's up? How you guys doing tonight? Thanks for tuning in. This very special occasion, tonight I have with me screenwriter and sex symbol, Todd Farmer.
It's true.
How's it going, man?
It's good. How's Kentucky?
Kentucky is very hot.
Is it really?
It's very hot. It's been very hot the past couple of weeks, really. It was up in the low 90s today and very, very humid.
I don't think we were that hot today. I think we hit 21 today. See, I'm on European time.
Well, I've wanted to have a very public conversation with you for a long time, so it's cool.
All right.
It's cool that it's finally happening, and I thank you for your time, and I'm sure everybody watching is thankful for your time also.
Welcome to my shed.
We're getting a behind the scenes look at the Todd Farmer shed tonight.
That is right. We spare no expense here, fellas.
Exactly. Not
And
at
ladies.
Yeah, we've got some ladies in the chat. I see y'all out there.
Good.
We got some ladies. Yeah. So tonight's just going to be kind of a cool, two Kentucky guys shooting the bull, talking about this and that and the other.
Awesome.
So, and if you guys out there have any questions for Mr. Farmer, kind of keep those to yourself, at least for the time being, until we get toward the end of the stream. And if Todd's cool with that, maybe we'll set some time aside for a little viewer Q&A.
Totally cool.
He's totally cool with that, man. Well, let's get right into it, man. When did you decide that screenwriting, or just writing in general, was something that you wanted to pursue professionally?
Tuesday.
Okay.
Not yesterday, but the week before.
You've accomplished a lot.
I feel like I have.
You've accomplished a lot in that short period of time, sir.
When did I decide? I was the kid around the campfire always telling stories, so I knew I wanted to write. I thought I wanted to write novels, and then I was visiting a friend of a friend in Atlanta, Georgia, and Major Payne was coming out, and there was a poster up, and he said, I went to school with the guy who wrote that. And it turned out to be Dean Lorey, who put Jason in Hell. And about a year later, I reached out and talked to Dean and sent him a script, and he read the first 40 pages and threw it in the trash. Called me up and said he threw it in the trash. And he said, you have no idea how to structure a movie, but you've got some really good ideas. I can teach you structure. He said, I can't teach good ideas. So we started working together, and eventually he said, move out to LA. So that was 1996, I believe. It might've been 95 when we first talked, but I moved out to LA in 96.
Okay. Well, Kentucky is about as far as you can possibly get from the glitz and glamour of Hollywood. Was there any pushback from family or friends when you said, "Hey, I'm gonna move out west and try and make a go of this screenwriting thing"?
No, there had been some pushback early on when I first mentioned that I was going to be a writer, and everyone thought that was cute because. And I remember my uncle once telling me, he said, "Look, we have just as much talent here in Kentucky as they do everywhere else. We just don't have the access." And so, because he knew some guys who played baseball and softball who were fantastic, but they never made it outside of Kentucky, and it was because they just didn't have access. They couldn't be seen, and I always remembered that. And when I moved out here, and when I came out here, I had nothing. I had a beat up old pickup truck. Nobody out here had a pickup truck, and I filled it with garbage bag, like I think probably 3 garbage bags full of clothes and an old 486 computer that barely worked. And I wrote my first couple of movies on an old piece of junk.
Well, how did you? Well, what was your first impressions of Hollywood coming from Kentucky?
I mean, I personally, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I grew up in a very small, very conservative, very all white town. And so to come out to LA where every kind of food you can imagine is just around the corner. Mm-hmm. And every religion, every thought process, every idea, it's all here. And you come out and you kind of figure out that we're all kind of the same. We all get along, and we do, and it's been fantastic. And I never regretted the move at all. Once I got here, it felt like there's a part of me that'll always be a Kentucky boy, but at the same time, I mean, this feels right. Plus, to be right near the ocean, it's lovely. Mm.
Do you make it back to Kentucky often?
I don't. I go back to most of my siblings. Well, all of my siblings are in. No. One of my brothers in Lexington. My other 2 siblings are in Memphis, and so I ended up going to Tennessee quite often. Mm. But a lot of the uncles and aunts, and they're all still in Kentucky.
Yeah.
And Kentucky's only 2 hours from Tennessee, so it's not like.
Yeah.
In LA, if you want to go to the bank, it's 2 hours. So
yeah. Exactly. Yeah, I have a lot of friends who live in Florida and out in California near the ocean, and I'm just like, oh God, if I could be near the ocean, that's where I would be at all times.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and they're just like, I live so close to it, I don't ever, it's just there. I never go to it. I'm 5 minutes away from it, but I never go.
Yeah, so. I mean, I haven't gone as much recently because we've all been locked down. But
of course, yeah.
When in normal times, when the planet is actually rotating, I go down there all the time. Mm.
Yeah. How did you hook up with Sean Cunningham and Crystal Lake Productions?
That again was through Dean Lorey, because Dean had done Jason Goes to Hell, and so I wrote. Dean had a deal at Universal at the time. I think he was writing this based on a comic book called Madman. And he had a couple other things he did. He did something with Ron Howard called They. He did Doom when it was supposed to be Schwarzenegger in the lead role. So he was doing all this stuff for Universal, and he had a deal there. And I'd written a couple of things for him there. And then he introduced me to Sean and said, let's do this thing where I write, Dean directs, and Sean produces. And so that's what gave me the introduction with Sean, and then I worked for Sean for 3 years, and
that happened pretty quickly once you made the move, wasn't it? Like you were in there pretty quick, right?
Yeah, I mean, I thought that's just how it worked. I didn't know that. I mean, I've since learned that there's a tremendous amount of luck involved in making it out here, but I was very lucky to have a movie within 3 years. It's kind of unheard of. It just doesn't happen.
What's Sean Cunningham like to work for?
He's fun. He's very fatherly in a lot of ways. Like, he will take you under his wing, and he will teach and train you. And he did. He showed me things and taught me things. And here's how you screw a fella in business. And then next week he would screw you with that same technique. And so you had to learn fast with Sean. And but at the same time, I mean, he was constantly, every time you turned around, he was cooking steaks, and so you always ate well. But we worked right out of the house, so my office was the maid's room, sitting in a rocking chair, and that's where everything was written. Now, the only thing that, and I don't know that he still feels the same way, but in the beginning, he didn't want to do horror.
Mm.
He wanted to do just about anything but horror. And it wasn't until toward the end of my stay that he was frustrated with Freddy versus Jason and said, let's just go make a Jason movie. So,
Yeah, I was going to ask. I mean, of course, everybody thinks Sean Cunningham. They think horror, so they probably think, well, you probably worked on a ton of horror, horror movies and developed a lot of horror projects there. What kinds of projects did you develop while there? Non-horror related projects.
I mean, since I'm right here on the computer, I can actually give you that answer quite quickly because I have a file called SSC Films. If I can find it. Is it under friend stuff? And where is it? No, it's not under friend stuff. But it's here somewhere. Maybe it's under dead projects. Oh, I have a lot of dead projects.
Ooh,
Holy crap, do I have a lot of dead projects.
I'm going to ask you about some of those here in a little while.
Well, let's see. Okay, well, I'll wait then. So we'll come back to that. But yes, I did, off the top of my head, I did a courtroom drama. We did an adaptation of a book based on delinquent kids in Spanish Harlem. There was a couple of action movies that we did, and then it was just Freddy versus Jason was in, I don't know, maybe its 6th or 7th draft. This was before Shannon Swift came on, and I ended up doing a draft of Freddy versus Jason, which we spent, I don't know how long we spent a ton of time on it. We developed it, we came with all these ideas, we wrote it, sent it into New Line, and maybe within 2 weeks they sent it back to us with a pass saying, yeah, we're not really interested, but they'd never opened it. They sent it back in the original envelope.
Oh my God.
It had never been opened. They didn't even read it. Welcome to Hollywood.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Well, what was your idea? Because, I mean, we all know that, Freddy versus Jason was just in development hell for years and years and years. Do you remember what your...
it was, I know there was a whole sequence, and I think maybe that's still there, a whole sequence about putting Jason to sleep so that they could send him into the dream world to battle Freddy. But it was event. It was over the top event movie. It was Godzilla versus King Kong. It was never supposed to be. There was nothing scary in it. It was all big goofy fun, I guess. But that was that. If I remember correctly, I'd have to dig it up. The problem is everything that I wrote back in that time period was on this program called Scriptware, which no longer exists. And anytime you had a problem with Scriptware, you'd call the tech support line. It was just some guy named Fred in the garage, and he would answer and he'd help you out. And Fred's no longer there. So the problem now is you can't take those old files and do anything with them unless you have that old compact disc that came in a little plastic covers to open up Scriptware. So I have all these old scripts that I cannot access anymore. I'm sure there's a way to do it. Someone's going to know.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. Oh, man.
But all of that old Cunningham stuff, and I probably did 20 different projects there, wrote 20 different projects, and draft after draft on all of those. But
was there any particular reason that none of those got off the ground? Was it just...
I mean, I think the biggest obstacle was that Sean, and it's like this with a lot of Hollywood people, myself included. I mean, when you start in a certain genre and have success in that genre, they tend to not want you to move around. It's not as bad now as it used to be, but that's because A-listers moved into horror. And so, some of the biggest horror movies going on right now, horror and thriller, they're from A-list directors and writers. That never used to happen when I started out. And so, but, after Scream, everything changed because horror became huge. And now you turn on the television, every other TV show is scary, horror-based. It didn't used to be that way. So as far as the horror fans are concerned, it's like all you can eat every day. So it's lovely.
Yeah.
It didn't used to be that way. It used to be just New Line and Dimension. That was it.
Yeah. Now every major studio kind of has their own little genre wing. You know, they sort of followed in the Dimension footsteps of, okay, let's set up our own genre wing and start making low budget horror.
Yeah, we saw that happening not long after Scream. I mean, once Scream came out, everything changed. Everybody had the genre department.
Yeah.
Like I did a movie at Revolution Studios, and at the time, they were doing horror because everybody else was doing horror, but they didn't like it. And so, and that was just, I mean, when I started out, there were a lot of places, you know, you would say, oh yeah, I worked on a Friday the 13th movie, and they would be like, oh, really? So that changed after Scream to some degree. It took a while to completely change, but now, I mean, look, anybody who worked on Hannibal, are you going to be embarrassed and go, really? You worked on Hannibal, the very successful TV show? Really? Nobody has a problem with it anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, you mentioned earlier that, you know, Sean was trying to get these other projects off the ground and they just weren't happening. Freddy versus Jason was in complete, you know, gridlock.
Mm-hmm.
Did he say, okay, let's do a Jason movie, or did you guys kind of say, okay, well, what about a Jason movie?
I don't know. I think it was him. It could have been his son was there, so it could have been Noel suggesting it. A guy named Mark Hazlitt was there. I think at the time it could have been him, but I think it was Sean saying, let's just go do it. But I could be wrong about that. I know what happened next was Jimmy came in. Jimmy had done a bunch of movies for Sean, and Jimmy came in and we just started tossing around ideas, and that was actually fun. It was because I had said all along, look, I'm just an idiot from Kentucky. I can't write courtroom dramas in the way that you need them to be written. I did the best job I could be, but I think if I could get scriptor to work and I go back and read any of those, I'd be embarrassed. And but you know, horror, it's not that it's easy. It's actually one of the I think one of the most complex structures you can go into, because everything goes. You have comedy, you have drama, you have romance, you have everything all wrapped into one genre.
Right.
And but at the same time, imagination is key, and so you can do any. You're not tied to courtroom procedure. You're not tied to how drugs work in Spanish Harlem. You can, you know, if you hit a wall, you just create your way out of it, and so that's a lot of fun.
Mm.
I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree. And New Line was like, sure, just whatever, as long as it doesn't interfere, you just do it.
Mm-hmm.
Was that
I
kind
don't
of
know that New Line ever said don't interfere. I think I said don't interfere because I was sort of I was militant when it came to chronological order and the way things happen and that sort of thing. So I didn't want to do a movie that took place right after Jason Goes to Hell, because we didn't know what they were doing with Freddy versus Jason.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, we'd sent a script over there, and we'd seen a bunch of scripts, but we didn't know what was happening. So I suggested, let's do something like Blade Runner that takes place hundreds of years into the future. And that way, whatever they do, we're fine. And that's how we ended up in space.
What other scenarios do you remember, you know, sort of dropping Jason into in those meetings?
I mean, we talked about all kinds of stupid stuff. I think my favorite setting was Jason in the Snow, which Jimmy wanted to do because visually it was lovely. And then either at the same time or years later, Shannon and Swift came up with the same idea. So we'll let other people debate on who came up with it first, like it really matters. And but there was also, like, we talked about having Jason take Manhattan, but actually go to New York and do it, and like not be on a boat.
Yeah.
We talked about dropping Jason into the Middle East and just seeing what happens, you know, like the government grabs him and does that. I know at one point there was talk about Jason and Gilbert Gottfried joining. I mean, look, we were talking about franchise, you know, we were talking number 10.
Yeah.
Where do you go from there?
Right.
And there was, I know there was Jason in the Hood we talked about. I mean, there's a lot of different ideas we talked about. All of this pretty much took place in the same day. And then I think it was in that same day I said, look, let's just do Jason in the future. And I pitched them sort of a Blade Runner kind of thing. And they all immediately said, we can't afford that. We can't do that. And I said, fine, let's do Alien. Let's just put them on a ship. It can be kids that, you know, and everything that you see today is sort of what I pitched that first time. And so that's why I tend to, you know, if you love it or hate it, it's my fault. I'm the one who said Jason in space. And yes, I know everyone was like, look, all these other movies went to space and they didn't work. Well, Alien went to space and it worked just fine. As long as you loved the project and did a good job, I thought, well, of course it's going to, as long as you got a good story, I thought it would do well. So,
Well, were you a fan of the Friday the 13th films before you actually wrote one? Were you a big horror fan growing up?
yeah, I was. I mean, to the point that I had seen, like, that's what we would do on a weekend. We would, whatever the new. I mean, sure, we would do, whatever. I don't even remember what big '80s movies were out at the time but we would have, Friday nights we would all get together and have pizza and watch movies, and it was normally a scary movie. So it was all the Halloween movies, all the Freddy movies, all the Jason movies, and then sometimes you'd watch, crazy stuff like Faces of Death or the weird things that nobody else had ever, But yes, I mean, I preferred Halloween. I think Halloween was probably the first one I saw. It was the first. And so that was Friday the 13th brought a more whimsical, fun element to it, where Halloween always felt real to me. So Halloween was scarier to me, in the same way that Jaws was scarier than Piranha. But if you look at the franchises, the Friday the 13th franchise, granted, in just my opinion, they never did the same thing. Halloween always felt like it was kind of doing the same thing over and over, where, with Jason and with Friday the 13th, I mean, the first movie could have been a completely different franchise, because there was no adult Jason. And then, if the longer you go from real Jason to zombie Jason, you go to fighting Carrie. I mean, everything about the Friday the 13th franchise was always unique. They were the ones taking the chances with 3D. 3D was the reason that we did My Bloody Valentine in 3D. In our brains, it was like, oh, Friday the 13th in 3D. We'll redo that. We didn't know that 3D was as glorious as it has become. We're thinking Jaws 3D and Halloween and Friday the 13th 3D. So, I mean, that's the thing about the franchise. They took all kinds of chances, and you don't get the same movie over and over. That's what I loved.
Yeah, very cool. I've always heard that a finished movie is really kind of three movies in one. It's the movie that's written, the movie that's shot, and then the movie that we actually see.
Yeah,
how did Jason X evolve from the script you wrote to the film that we eventually saw?
The script that was written originally was more expensive. There was an entire sequence where they go to find Jason on dead planet Earth, and there were countermeasures inside the facility. So as they get into this lab, had all these robotic spiders, pop up out of the walls and out of the floors and attack the kids. And when we had gone to DeLuca, that was still in the script, and DeLuca had just done Lost in Space. And in Lost in Space, there's a whole sequence of sort of robotic spiders. And he said, yeah, don't do that. It was a nightmare. It's a nightmare. It's a nightmare for the CGI. It's a nightmare for all these. Just don't do that. And there was also this huge zero gravity sequence where they're all floating around and Jason's in there floating around with them. And so, you're floating towards Jason and there's no way to stop yourself. And so he kills the crap out of you. But of course, we couldn't afford that either. So for the most part, the structure is the same. It's the same. And the structure is Aliens I just ripped off Aliens. Why wouldn't you? So, at the point when the Marines, are going to blast off and nuke it from space, we have that whole sequence in Jason X. So, I mean, that's where the structure came from. So I felt like the structure was sound because I ripped off camera. I mean, should have been sound. And then as we got into filming, Scream had come out. So Scream was very self-aware and very jokey. And so that sort of so when you talk about the script versus the movie itself, the movie went in a bit of a different direction because of that. And also just the design itself. I always saw Alien as the design, but we ended up with more of a Star Trek colorful design, which I'm not against necessarily. It's just in my head, it was always one way, and Uber Jason was never RoboCop in my head. But of course we ended up with the guy who designed RoboCop. So of course it became RoboCop. But in my head, it was this dirty, horrific, painful looking thing. Jason X, I mean, Uber Jason, I don't know that we called him Uber Jason at the time. I don't remember what we called him, but he became, I think Sean Penn coined the name Uber, and that's what he became. But and then in editing, normally the movie would change, but Jimmy and David Hammond edited the movie, and they were very close. So, I mean, the movie pretty much stayed. In a lot of ways, in editing, the movie went back to the script in some places, which was interesting.
That's cool. Well, you've.
I'll give you one thing about editing. I don't know that I've ever really mentioned this much, if ever, but there's a moment when she tells the professor that, you know, Jason is this killer, and in editing they swapped that, so he actually knows, like, he didn't know who Jason was when they first said it, but in the movie you already know that he knows. So it adds this whole different layer and dynamic, but that changed. But I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No. You've mentioned Jimmy a couple of times, the name Jimmy, in reference to James Isaacs, the director of Jason X, who's no longer with us, unfortunately.
Right.
What was he like as a director? Because I heard that he was the one behind making it more colorful. And what other creative contributions did he make toward Jason X?
He, I mean, for starters, Jimmy was, and still is wherever he's at, a great guy. I mean, he always was very polite, very thoughtful, and he wasn't a yeller on set, which I can't stand. You know, he put actors first. He was very charismatic and very creative. I mean, for years after Jason X, we kept talking about what we were going to do next. And we just never did make anything happen. But for starters, it was tough because Jason didn't do well at the box office. Mm. And so, you know, when that happens, people aren't banging on your door to come do something else. Mm. And but we talked about tons of things, but I didn't know that he brought the color to it. I mean, to be honest, it was, at the time, I was extremely distracted with rewrite after rewrite after rewrite. And so I was rewriting all through production, and I wasn't there. The first day of shooting is me coming around the corner with a gun. That was day one. I was the very first shot. And after I was gone after a week. So most of the film was shot while I wasn't there. So I really didn't know what was going on. I didn't know. I saw sets being built and that sort of thing, but I was writing. I was stuck in a little hotel room. And I came back with Dean Lorey, I don't know how long later, weeks later, and he and I did some rewrites. But again, we were stuck in a hotel room. But Jimmy's vision, you know, it was on Jason X that I realized that it's not my job to argue with the director. It's my job to support the director, because what good is that going to do if I'm arguing? I'm not going to win, for starters. Mm-hmm. And number two, if I'm supportive of him, then I can give him ideas and give him suggestions, whether he can use or not, but it helps the process. And so, and I've always been like that. So whatever director I work with, I'm supporting 100%. But, you know, I miss Jimmy. I wish we had done something other than Jason X, because I think we had lots of stories to tell.
You mentioned Jason X 2. Where could that? We know, of course, at the end of Jason X, Jason he lands on Earth 2. Is that where your Jason X 2 would have taken?
That's where it was. Yeah. It was. I had heard a rumor, which I think has now turned out not to be true, but that Kevin had planned 3 Scream movies when he was writing. I don't think that was true. I've heard that's not true. That's just something. Yeah. That's something he told people to get the next 2 movies. But when I heard that, I was like, oh, that's interesting. So I started playing around with the idea. And the idea was simply that the second movie would take place on Earth 2, where things are pretty much under control. And you know, society is much more Star Trek, you know, following in the footsteps of the original movie. So, you know, they can bring people back to life. They can, you know, reattach severed limbs. I mean, all these things. And then suddenly you got Jason running around hacking people up. And so they can't kill him. So at the end of the movie, they all hunker together, just like the Manhattan Project, and finally figure out this whole time travel thing. And they send him back in time. And they just happen to send him to Crystal Lake back in the 1980s. And so then the last movie would be, Jason with the burlap sack taking on Uber Jason.
Oh,
So could have been fun.
that sounds like a lot of fun. Definitely. Yeah. I kind of look at Jason X more like an action film than a horror film. It's the most actiony Jason movie.
Yeah, I would agree.
It has a very unique sense of humor. And you eschewed the old, final girl convention because you've got a bunch of people, you guys and girls and a robot. Were all those? Did you purposefully try to go against the grain with some of those, typical slasher movie elements?
Well, I mean, sure, because we were on number 10, so I felt like at this point we could. And plus, I wasn't breaking the mold too much. I mean, we did have Jason versus telekinesis at some point. I wasn't the first one to break out of, the regular slasher idea. So I felt like I had permission to go somewhere else. But for whatever, I think because space had failed for others, then, we always had it against us. And, but yeah, I mean, the idea of putting C-3PO in a Friday the 13th movie, oh, that was great. That's what I even think in one of the early drafts, the robot was male. I can't remember, maybe. And, but yeah, I mean, it was always to, like the first draft didn't have any nudity. And they were like, because I was in this, and I'm still am to some degree. I was in this place where I didn't think it was fair that every time we do a horror movie, the women have to get naked and the women have to stay naked. And there's never any naked dudes. And so I wasn't going to do the gratuitous nude scene. And they were like, no, you have to. And I was like, fine. So I did an S&M scene. I didn't have her take her top off. And then later we did the whole, do you want to smoke pot? Which was Noel Cunningham's line. Smoke pot and have premarital sex, which is a brilliant line.
No, brilliant.
And then we did our boobies. And, but then, but I kept that same thought process. So if you go back and you watch My Bloody Valentine and Drive Angry, I'm the first to, here's my ass. And it's not like it's not like Lethal Weapon where you come back to Mel Gibson and you just get a glimpse of the booty as he's pulling the jeans up. No, I left them bad boys on the ground for a while. Here's my butt.
What did your mother think of you showing your butt to the whole world?
Well, the family was, I don't know how. I have told my daughter, don't Google me. Just don't even go there.
Don't even go there. Don't even go there.
Look, I don't mind taking my clothes off.
Well, and let's think about it. The two times that I remember you taking your clothes off, you were also with very beautiful women who also.
Kristen and Betsy were, if you got to be naked, Kristen and Betsy are by far good people to be naked with.
I've never been naked with either, unfortunately, but I'll definitely take your word for it.
I'll make some calls.
Please do. Please do. I'd appreciate that very much. I'm sure most of us know that Jason X was exiled on a shelf somewhere at New Line for it was over a year and a half or something like that, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a while.
Yeah. Was the reason I heard that the reason that happened was because there was a Michael DeLuca left New Line. There was a power change, and the new people involved were just like, meh, whatever. Is that what happened?
That is, I don't know for certain, but that's certainly what I have been told and always thought. When they were still there was a guard. The guard had changed. DeLuca had left, and DeLuca was our green light. Mm-hmm. And when we got to the point where we're looking to move forward, and you've got all these new executives, normally when there's a takeover like that, the products that are on the shelf, nobody's there to champion them, and that was the case. Mm-hmm. And so at the same time, they were all trying to rebrand because we all thought that Kane would be in Freddy versus Jason. I mean, mm-hmm. We even said to him, don't gouge us on the price right now because you've still got Freddy versus Jason. You're going to make money there. And they didn't go there. And so I still think I got nothing against Ken, but Kane kept the franchise alive for years when nothing was happening. It should have been Kane. But
I agree,
Kane,
and I think
could
most.
Kane could also be an ornery fella if he needed to be. So
Yeah, I'm sure I agree, and I think most horror fans agree that it just wasn't the same without him. And I can also agree he can be a little ornery. There for a long time, if you met him at a convention, when I met him the first time, he asked, "Have I met you before?" And I said, "Well, no." And he goes, "Okay." And he proceeded to choke me to the point where I almost lost my life. So the next time I met him, I said, "Look, we've met. And,
don't choke me again.
Please don't choke me like that again."
He it's funny because he's harder on fans than he was on the actors, because I desperately wanted I wanted him to smash my face into the wall because I thought it'd be fun. Plus, by the way, there's a hole cut in the wall and it's covered with a nice rubbery kind of fabric. So, I was gonna bounce, and he wouldn't let me do it. And so he brought in this big bald dude who was the guy in the cage who fights Wolverine, because they were shooting that in Toronto at the time. And the opening of X-Men, the first X-Men.
Yeah.
There's this big monstery bald dude. And so they bring him in. So that's when you see from behind, and these, Kane's pushing my head. That's not my head. That's his stunt guy. And I'm standing off to the side, and he slams that face into the wall, and the guy missed the hole.
Oof.
And so the next time I saw him, there's no nose. It's just blood everywhere. And Kane was like, see? And I was like, dude, I wouldn't have missed a hole. I probably would have missed the hole. And all of this beauty wouldn't be here right now.
Well, thank God. Thank God that did not happen.
I know.
Horror fans are a passionate bunch, and we're very passionate about our franchises, and in particular,
It's true.
our Friday the 13th franchise. What have your encounters with fans been like, both online and in person? Because I heard that you actually went camping with some fans not long ago, or a few years ago, I should say.
I did indeed.
Well,
The Blake and Brenna, who ran FridayThe13th.com, I think it later became FridayThe13thFilms.com, because they graciously gave FridayThe13th.com to New Line.
oh,
But when they this is back ages ago, and I knew we were working on Freddy versus Jason at the time, and so I was stalking around in there, but I never made it a secret as to who I was. Like Mark Swift was on there as Fuse Together. He never told nobody he was there. They all suspected it was him, but yeah, I was in there all the time. And then one year Blake reached out and said, "Hey, we're gonna go camping. Would you surprise everyone to show up?" And I was like, "Absolutely." So we flew to Zimbabwe, Arkansas, and showed up and got extremely inebriated with a bunch of Friday the 13th fans, and stayed inebriated. I remember one night the park ranger came and banged on their door because we were staying with Blake and Brenna, and he was like, "There's vomit all over the commons area." And so they had to go clean up vomit for me. It was so much. It's lovely.
so have you had mostly positive encounters with fans? Have you had any negative encounters with fans, online or in person?
I mean, it's all been, for the most part, it's all been, mostly positive. I mean, the anonymity of the internet allows people to be a little more dickish than normal.
Mm-hmm.
I know for a long time there was a post on IMDb that said, Jason X or cancer, which is worse. And, that kind of stuff you just sort of you get used to after a while. But yeah, for the most part, I mean, there's been some oddities. Like when I lived up in Monterey, Pacific Grove, California. We're about 6 hours north of LA, about an hour and a half south of San Francisco. Beautiful place to live, right on the ocean. And I think this was maybe around the time when you take a picture with your phone and you get the GPS of everything. Well, this one dude showed up. My daughter, who was teeny tiny at the time, came into the bedroom. She's like, "Dad, there's somebody at the door." And it was raining, and I go to the door, and there's a dude standing there with a machete saying, "Would you sign this? You're Todd Farmer."
Oh.
So
Did you sign it, or did you tell him to
signed his machete, and then we moved. He was a lovely fella, but don't show up with the machete at the door.
No, this wasn't at night, was it?
I know it was early in the morning. It was like 7 o'clock in the morning.
That'd be even scarier for me.
It was scary.
Jeez, goodness
Well,
gracious.
it actually wasn't scary. It was weird.
Yeah.
Look, I'm a fan. Still, that's weird.
As passionate as a lot of fans are, they do occasionally lack decorum. If you've ever been to a convention, you know that.
That's the only. Well, no, it's been the conventions. The ones I've done have always been great. He's the only guy who, like, I felt like kind of crossed a boundary. But for the most part, when there's always what's always been great about the horror fans is that yes, they are passionate, but at the same time, they're really polite. Like, I think they're more polite than you say anything negative about Batman, or good grief, you're going to have fires in your yard. But horror fans haven't been. Horror fans seem to be able to disagree and not pull machetes out, like say your typical Batman fan.
That's a good point.
But
That's a good point.
I think it's because in horror, you understand the fragility of life.
That's true.
Maybe you don't with Batman. I don't know, but
I think that's true. I remember Wes Craven's quote about horror, that horror was boot camp. It's a boot camp for the psyche.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe that's it. I don't know.
It's been a fun ride, though. I have no regrets with any of the conventions I did or any of the fans that I've ran into in the world. I've always been polite and wonderful. Even the ones that didn't like the movie. Brian Collins didn't necessarily. No, wait, maybe Brian Collins. No. He didn't necessarily love Jason X. He thinks Jason Takes Manhattan is better. What an idiot. But we're friends. So,
what are your thoughts on the Cunningham Miller lawsuit and its ramifications on the industry and on screenwriting in particular in the future?
It's an interesting one. I don't know what's. I don't know all the details. I don't know. I've stayed away from it for the most part, just because, I like Victor, I like Sean. Without them, there's no Friday the 13th. It's a tough one. It's like your parents fighting. How do you choose a side on that one? So, I do find Hollywood is frustrating in that you can, like, there's comic books and there's Uber Jason books and stuff, and I don't see any money from that stuff. And there was no Uber Jason before I showed up. So, there's a if you write a piece of music, you own that piece of music. If you write a movie, you don't own anything. And you get some residuals, but these days, because DVDs have gone away, there's residuals are not as I can remember a time when I used to live on residuals, because there just wasn't that much work. And so it's because we would have to write and you write 10 projects and maybe one of those gets made, maybe not. So there's a lot of work involved. So having those residuals was always a good thing. But to not own anything that you create from scratch, I understand if you're creating something based on, like, I saw Old Guard the other day, which is stunning. But it's based on a comic book, and so I get that. And I've written a comic book. I've got something at a thing called Failsafe with Michael B. Jordan attached, and Joe is currently writing it. And Joe wrote Black Panther, so he's good. And so this is going to be at Netflix. And so because I wrote it with FJ, we own it, which is different than writing Jason X. You don't own anything, but Cry Me a River, poor Todd in his fancy shed.
Do you think because at this point it seems like Miller's pretty much won the case. Do you think that's going to impact studios and producers wanting to purchase spec scripts going forward?
No, I don't think. I think it will just. I think the money is there. I don't think it's it's like this change is going to cost the studios a tremendous amount of money. I remember the Weinsteins, the loving Weinsteins. How adorable are they? I remember this something. I think it was, I don't remember if it was Bob or Harvey, but one of them had said something about the fact that it doesn't matter that a movie flops, because that movie is theirs forever. They're going to keep making money, a little bit at a time, and eventually they're going to not only break even, they're going to make a ton of money. And you look at movies that failed. I mean, you look at Big Trouble in Little China, which is now being remade. You look at Blade Runner, which was a failure, which is now, which has had its reboot. Movies. Once you make a movie, the studio owns it. Producers, who, if they own it, it never goes away. So I like the idea that the writers might own a piece of what they create. Mm-hmm. Seems like it would be fair.
Yeah. Did Jason X open any doors for you? Did it close any doors for you after the film was finally released?
I mean, yeah. I mean, it opened doors. Certainly opened doors with fans, and I don't know that it opened doors necessarily business-wise. Not back then. Now people have sort of softened to it, and there's not as much hate as there used to be. But what I did coming out of that, because at the end of Jason X, I didn't go back to Sean, and I don't think I was even invited to go back to Sean. I think we were both ready to go our separate ways. But I wrote a thriller spec, which I ended up optioning, and it had Jonathan Hensley attached to direct it. Jonathan Hensley he'd worked on Young Indiana Jones. He was a lawyer who'd started writing, and then he wrote Jumanji. And he wrote Die Hard with a Vengeance, The Rock. I mean, he was big at the time, screenwriter, and he wanted to direct. And so he was supposed to direct this thing I wrote called Riddle Me This, and then he ended up running off to direct Thomas Jane and The Punisher. And that didn't do as well as he had wanted, and so mine never got made. But I had written that before Jason X came out. I think if I hadn't written that, I would have been in trouble, because if I had waited for Jason X to come out and be a big hit. And by the way, back then I assumed it would be huge, but this was before they put. I thought Uber Jason would always be a surprise. So I thought if you go see a movie of Jason in space, and halfway through that movie, suddenly Jason becomes this thing, and you don't tell anybody, that's just the word of mouth, I felt like it would have been a much bigger hit. But that's just me. Maybe I'm wrong, because I felt like Scream had the same thing. Nobody released the secret of Scream, and they did that on purpose. But with Jason, it wasn't. I mean, with Friday the 13th, not the same thing.
Well, I remember seeing pictures of Uber Jason when the movie was still in production online.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. There
wow.
were pictures of Uber Jason everywhere. There were pictures. It seemed
wow.
like there were millions of pictures of Jason X just popping up on different horror websites, and one of them was, say hello to Uber Jason.
Wow, I don't remember that. Maybe I did know that at the time.
And of course, I mean, they threw Uber Jason right on the poster for the film, too. So
they did do that. I mean, I like the poster. It's a lovely poster, but I mean, good grief, you don't put the dick from the Crying Game on a poster.
Thank God.
So I put Uber Jason.
Yeah. And of course, I mean, I think by the time that movie was released, everybody who wanted to see it had already seen it, because there was a bootleg floating around.
Yeah.
And,
did you see it in the theater? Because you don't seem hardly old enough.
Let's see. No, I was early 20s when that movie came out. I'm 40 years old. I turned 40 on the 12th.
You look good.
Thank you. I've been told that. Thank you.
There you go. No, when we saw it at Universal with a bunch of friends, and it was maybe there were 10, 15 of us, and there was one other couple there. Huge auditorium.
And I don't remember any marketing for that film. I think I saw one TV spot for that movie during Monday Night Raw. That was the only place I saw that movie promoted in any way.
Yeah. I saw it a couple times, but I was kind of looking for it. So, but I didn't, because back then, I don't think we didn't have the system of sort of guessing what a movie's going to do like we have now. So I didn't know it was going to do bad until we were sitting in the theater and nobody else came in. So that was and it's weird because you spend years working and then your movie comes out and nobody sees it and you're like, well, my career's over.
Yeah.
And so, no, go ahead.
No. Please go ahead. Please finish.
Well, fortunately, I had written this thing and optioned it, and so I had work to do. But I don't think I would have. I really think had it not been for that, I would have. I mean, I would have kept writing and tried to do something else, but it would have been difficult. I mean, I don't think you ever, unless you sell a movie for $1 million or have a giant movie, unless Pulp Fiction comes out and changes everything. I don't know that. It's not having a movie come out does not necessarily mean you're set, that the next job is a done deal. So it's a weird business.
I actually started following your website, Wendigo. I think it was before Jason X actually came out, and it was. I thought it was an absolutely fascinating look behind the curtain of the life of a working screenwriter. And there's one story, or one post that I vividly remember you writing, and it had to do with the fact that the story was you went to apply for a job at a bookstore. Do you remember this?
Now you have to remind me.
You went to apply for a job at a bookstore. I'm pretty sure it was a bookstore.
Oh wait, I do remember this.
Okay. You handed the kid behind the counter your application.
Yeah, I do remember that.
They recognized your name and started laughing.
Yeah, I do remember that.
I just about, because it was the way that you wrote. It was, it's like I was right there standing next to you watching these kids laugh. And I remember just being like, but I loved your blog at that time. It was hilarious because you were talking about, it's, the movie's done.
Yeah.
It's not out. I'm not, I got to get a job I got to make money.
Yeah.
So, and here's these jerk off kids who recognize my name are laughing at me.
I'd forgotten that. I must have blocked it out. But yeah, that was yeah. I remember that. I don't think anybody can do a blog like that anymore. I don't think you can be that brutally honest. Like I know there is an executive that there's been several executives. Like I would go have a meeting and then I'd come back and blog about what an idiot that person was. I don't think you can do that anymore.
I also remember you having some, and it wasn't, you weren't speaking too negatively about it, but if you read between the lines, you were speaking negatively about your experience on The Messengers or having written The Messengers.
Yeah.
And I think you got like what, a story by credit on that one?
A story by, yeah. They were like Mark Wheaton got the screenplay by, and Mark was Smiling Jack Ruby from what was he on? I forget which website. He was one of the critics called Smiling Jack Ruby. I forget which website now, but maybe it was Ain't It Cool? I can't remember. Anyway, he got the credit, but there were a bunch of writers that came after him, and so when Ghost House said, "Hey, we're going to give credit to Mark," and Todd automatically gets story by, none of the other writers arbitrated because none of them changed enough of it to feel like they deserved it. And so Mark ended up getting full credit, even though he himself says a lot of it's not me. So it was a weird situation. And but I mean, hardly any of it is me. It's still on a farm, and the characters are mine, but everything else is very different.
My favorite writer horror story, because I love to hear. I love reading interviews or hearing interviews with screenwriters, and there was a great documentary on Netflix about working screenwriters. I don't remember what it was called, but my favorite screenwriter horror story is Brendan Hood. He wrote They, which became Wes Craven Presents They.
Yeah.
And his story is that he wrote that script as a spec. He got an agent through the old query letter process. The agent sold the script, so he's on cloud nine. He's done the impossible.
Yeah.
And it was sold to the Weinsteins, unfortunately, and it immediately went through the hands of a dozen other writers. And at the end of the day, His is the only name left on there, as written by Brendan Hood, but the only thing that remains from his original screenplay is the title.
Yeah, that isn't. Yeah, that's the
And-
thing. No, go ahead. You keep going.
And he said that I was caught in this huge catch-22 where I needed a credit to continue working, but my only credit makes me look like the worst writer in the world.
Yeah. No, I get that. I mean, I totally get that. I at first I felt that way about Jason X, because I wanted Alien or Aliens, and that's not what we got. And so I felt like, and then the movie didn't do well, and people are crapping all over it. And so I wanted to come out and say, this is not mine. But at the same time, there was so much of it. Like when it changed tone, when it went somewhere else, with the whole "he screwed" line, that's my line. I mean, I accepted the change and went with it. But no, I get that. It's a weird business where you are surrounded by people who can't do what you do, but they're telling you what to do.
Yeah.
And there was a time when I first got started, Jonathan Hensley, Dean Laurie, all these guys would say, when you go to these meetings and they give you notes, you get in their faces and you fight. You're a big guy, tell them you ain't gonna make the change. And I did that and it worked. But then there came a time when the business changed. And so you had all these new guys coming in to write, and they're like, we'll do whatever change you want. And you know what? We'll do it for half the price. And so the business suddenly changed. So quotes went out the window. So, if you're making a lot of money, within a year, you're making whatever they'll offer. Unless you're Quentin Tarantino or unless you've proven yourself at the box office. And so, like, even when My Bloody Valentine was successful, we didn't really get a lot of credit for that because it was considered a fluke. Oh, it's 3D. It's kind of a fad. It's 3D. But yet everyone was doing 3D. And a lot of them were doing garbage 3D. And so 3D ended up losing its grip. But if I tell people all the time now, if you're a screenwriter and you need some advice, be a doctor or a lawyer. Don't be a screenwriter. That's the best advice I can give. Or be a producer or be an executive, because you end up controlling everything anyway. And I'm not saying that to be jaded. I'm just saying that's actually how it works.
But I mean, have you felt like that as a screenwriter, that you're the most expendable cog in the wheel, and you're a dime a dozen, and if you won't do what we tell you to do, we'll get somebody else in, because anybody can do what you do?
I mean, certainly, yeah, you can feel that way. What I've ended up realizing is it's a lot about relationships, and I won't work with someone a second time if I don't like them. That didn't used to be the case. That is the case now. Life's too short. I just want to work with people that we're like-minded, that, we like a certain movie. If you like Dawn of the Dead and somebody else likes Night of the Living Dead, and they fight over those, then don't work with the one that you don't agree with. Why would you? Yeah. It makes it, and plus creatively, it's much better. I get along with Patrick Lussier creatively. I get along with Dean Laurie creatively. That's the reason that, we tend to gravitate to each other and keep working together.
Well, thank you, Nico, for the $5 super chat. He says, what a great interview. Thanks to you both. My Bloody Valentine 3D rules. And that's the perfect segue.
That's lovely.
The perfect segue into tell us about the dawning of what I like to call the Farmer Lussier connection and the genesis of My Bloody Valentine 3D.
Well, the dawning was actually on Messengers back when it was called Scarecrow. And you've probably already read this if you were in my journal. But we met on that, and I didn't know who Patrick was. I hadn't seen. No, that's not true. I had seen Dracula 2000. I hadn't seen the sequels, I hadn't seen the sequels. But he came in. He had some ideas. We did some changes, and then we both. I got replaced by Stuart Beattie, who had just finished Collateral, so he was sort of everywhere. And then Patrick ended up getting replaced, and then it went into Turnaround, and then ended up at Ghost House, and became what it became. But Patrick and I stayed in touch. And then years later, he was doing a project, and I'm not sure I can talk about it because he was doing it sort of under the table. But I had reached out to him to see how he was doing, and he said he was doing some reshoots on a project. And he said, it's miserable. We're shooting tomorrow, and we don't have a scene, and I don't know what to do. And I think he said, or I may have said, do you want me to take a look at it? And so he sent it to me, and I sent it back to him with an hour completely rewritten, but staying within the boundaries of what you can and can't do when you're in production. Like, I didn't change night to day. I didn't add new actresses and actors. I stayed within that world. I just rewrote dialogue and moved things around within the set. And he called back and said, thank you so much. And he shot it the next morning. And so I did that a couple of times. Now, this was at Lionsgate. So Lionsgate knew I was doing it. There's no special thanks. It was all super secret, so nobody knows I did it. But they were aware, so that when he was working on Bloody Valentine, he came back to me and said, hey, would you be interested in writing this? But it was a weird thing because the writers were about to go on strike. And we did go on strike. And so Lionsgate cut a deal with the Writers Guild so that if my working for them, I could continue to work for them. And the unfortunate part was Lionsgate said, we're going to offer you $20 and a carton of Marlboros. And I was like, whoa, I was kind of hoping for a little more than that. And they were like, well, you know what? There are 1 million writers out of work. So, and I did smoke Marlboros at the time. I've since quit. But I ended up taking it for a very tiny, embarrassing amount of money. And so that's how, but Patrick and I had done a couple of other things that we tried to get going. This was our first movie since we'd worked on Messenger's legitimate movie. And then, the movie took off and it became 3D. And Zane, who wrote the first draft, wrote a very different draft, but a lot of the stuff that he created, I kept. The threesome romance between them, and the fact that Axel was a sheriff, we liked that, and so that's when I shared credit with him. But Patrick had done a lot of work on it, and didn't get credit for that writing, and so after that movie, that's when I said to him, I said, you know what? From now on, we'll be a writing team, and that way you're always protected. And so we ended up writing Drive Anger together.
When I announced that I was going to be doing this conversation with you, there were two.
You didn't know it would be in the shed, right?
I didn't, but I mean, it looks great. It looks fantastic.
Yeah, it's great.
It's a damn good shed.
We got a curtain here too.
Beautiful. When I announced that I was going to be talking to Todd Farmer, a lot of people, when it came to the topic of My Bloody Valentine 3D, two things came to the surface. One of them is the Atkins, the great Tom Atkins, who I'm a huge fan of. What is it like to just bask in the glory of Tom Atkins?
He is everything that you imagine and more. We either email or he likes handwritten letters, so I will on occasion write him a handwritten letter, and he will write it back. But he is just as lovely as you think he would be. He's very old school. One of the first guys that I met when I came out here was a guy named Dean Reisner. Dean Reisner wrote Dirty Harry, High Plains Drifter, Blue Thunder. I mean, a bunch of those old guy movies. And in a lot of ways, Tom reminds me of that, because he tells those stories and he refers to these old actors and these old dames, and because he's from a different generation. And look, I mean, Patrick and I are fortunate enough that we've worked with Tom 3 times now. I mean, a lot of people can't say that, and that's a big deal. And he's just lovely. I mean, nobody saw Trick, but he's fantastic in Trick. Like, everything that he did is way above and beyond what we wrote. He's just really good. I mean, every time he's on screen, he shines.
Oh, of course, yeah.
And he's just a lovely guy. Absolutely.
I was going to say you've worked with him 3 times. Are there any stories, any humorous Atkins stories that you can share with us?
I mean, look, I've only been starstruck. You see actors and you see celebrities out here all the time in LA. It's one of those things. And we, for the most part, you don't go up and say, oh my God, I'm a big fan. You let them have their life. And I saw Stuart Copeland, he's the drummer from The Police. I saw him at he and his brother's bar one night, and I was tongue-tied. I'd never been that crazy until I met Tom. because I mean, when I was growing up, Tom was Halloween 3. I mean, Tom was the Fog. I mean, Tom was Tom. How could you? And so on Valentine, I didn't talk to him really. Oh, well, he wasn't even on set when I was there on Valentine. So that was all outside of me. But on Drive Angry, I was there the whole time. So I was able to, buddy around with him, and especially on Trick. I mean, Trick, it was stunning. Like I got pictures of Tom that I haven't shared because, they're my pictures. And he's just, he just takes everything. He's very fatherly, but at the same time, he can do, like, I did this thing the other night where we did a live Twitter thing with Trick, and everybody went crazy when Tom had his big moment. And it's, you just, I've got this thing that we're going to shoot in Ireland if the world ever starts spinning again. And I called him up and I was like, how's your Irish accent? And he was like, I'm ready. And he's so, I mean, hopefully he'll be in number 4. And then whatever Patrick and I end up doing again, he always has a part. He always will have a part. So as long as he's willing to work with us.
That's awesome.
And yes,
I love Tom Atkins.
Anytime you get a chance to go visit him at a convention, go do so. He's a lovely man.
I've met him once, so I have met him. I was able to bask in his glory for just a short period of time, but it was enough.
He's pretty good. We did a convention once, and people kept buying all of us drinks. And I don't drink as much as I did, but I was drinking a lot of Long Islands, and people kept buying them for me. And Tom was drinking wine, and they kept buying them for him. And Tyler Maine I don't remember what Tyler was drinking, probably whiskey. But the 3 of us got so messed up. And I remember the next day, Tom was like, I hate both of you. We didn't buy the drinks. We didn't make you drink them. Anyway, he's a lovely man.
Lovely man. The other thing that a lot of people mentioned in regards to My Bloody Valentine is Betsy Rue. That's it. Just Betsy Rue.
Yeah, no.
Just some lady. I don't know. But
yes, to answer the question, yes, Betsy and I did actually have sex during that scene. Everyone asked. Yes, we did. Of course we did.
You've heard it here first. Jeez.
It's the one question that I get asked the most. Did you and Betsy really do it? Yes, we really did it with 30 union Teamsters standing around us with the boot on the side of the bed. Yes, we certainly did. No, we didn't have real sex.
There you go. How hard did Patrick Lussier have to twist your arm to get you to act in that scene?
It's a funny story. I think it's a funny story because he set me up. He totally set me up. And I didn't realize he was setting me up because he knew that I'd get a little bitchy about stuff. And I knew that Lionsgate was being a little tight with the money. And so, and we're doing this 3D movie, and 3D was brand new, and they only Journey to the Center of the Earth, and they only did some of the 3D, and it's just everything about it was risky, and we didn't know what it was going to be like on the day. I mean, we were having to build the cameras, and they were the size of a refrigerator. They were huge. And so it was just, we didn't know what we were getting into. And then he calls me up and he says, they want to cast a local guy for Frank. And I was like, you're kidding. And it's not that Pennsylvania doesn't have great actors. They do. But if you've never done an effects scene, and I had never done a sex scene, but I know that can't be easy either. You got these two, with the blood and the gore, you do it, and then you got to race to the freaking the trailer and wash off, and then race back and put your clothes on, and you can't be consumed with being naked because everybody's got to get you dressed and get you back. It's just everything about it is hard. And so I was like, why are they doing it? He was like, I know, it's going to be a nightmare. Would you do it? And his reasoning was he thought because I'm big that this is the first time the minor sort of shows himself. And so if he can kill me, then he can kill anybody. That was Patrick's reasoning. And he also knew that I would put Betsy first and not be, because he said, he'd already done a bunch of readings like with people. And he was like, they're all milking it to have their moment. And he's like, you're not an actor. He was thinking to himself, you're not an actor. You don't want to be an actor. So you'll make it about Betsy. And I did. And so I had to ask my wife and say, Patrick wants me to play the role of Frank. And she was like, the sex scene? And I was like, yeah. And she was like, rock star. Now, that was her reaction then. We are no longer together. So take that in mind before you do the little naked scenes. And I don't that wasn't her problem. But anyway, it was a fun little moment. And we had a blast shooting. I mean, it was Betsy and I choreographed the whole thing ourselves, just talking it through. I mean, we didn't get together and practice. We just talked.
I was going to say, did you get together and practice?
No. And we went in there, and I said to Patrick, I said, okay, unless you want to block this thing, we have some ideas. And he's like, you just go. And so we had planned this long sex scene. So everything that you envisioned for a sex scene was in this thing that we planned. And it was just, we knew what was first and what was next. And we went through all the positions and all of the sideline sexual things. And we went through all of that. And we're doing that. And every now and then I would look up and I'd see people in the background just doing this because they were in bed. Like, I'm on her hair. I'm aiming into the wrong hole. I mean, everything is going wrong during the sex. It's not the best sex. But they turned the cameras on and just let them roll. Now, I don't know how long the scene lasted, but I know when Patrick went to the MPAA, he let that whole scene go. It's just one shot of us just continually doing our stuff. So when it got to them, they were like, well, this is a problem. They didn't pay any attention to the blood and the gore and anything else. Their whole focus was this can't happen. You got to, this. And he had already cut it down to like what it is right now. He knew what the movie was going to be. So the man is brilliant as far as I'm concerned. And I would like to think that Betsy and I get a little bit of love on that one. But
it's definitely one of the most memorable moments in that film. No doubt about it.
Well, that's because of her. I mean, I think she takes it to the next, because I had written that she gets dressed and runs after him when he leaves. And she was like, no, I'd never put my clothes on. Wow. And so
that's got to, whenever I see a lady in a movie that does, show some skin, I think that's a ballsy move. Cause I mean, especially, and I mean, she had on some clogs and that's it, you know what I mean? There wasn't a stitch on her body. So, I mean, to me, I mean, that's a pretty gutsy move on her part to do that.
I mean, everything about it, I think it's a shame that her career didn't explode after that, because everything about what she did for that scene was phenomenal. And she took it was not a gratuitous sex scene, because every part of it was, she was one of the characters from the original storyline when the movie opened up. I mean, everything about it was the miner comes back to town and then she dies. That sex scene sort of sets everything off. And it's right in front of you because, Numbnuts is right outside the window. So, I mean, that launches this whole big thing again. And it wasn't the sex, it was her, because she was in that mine in the beginning. I mean, it was all a part of that storyline. And for her to then say, I wouldn't put my clothes on, because at first that's ballsy, but then you think about it, for her character, she's like, I'm just going to there's a film of me having sex. I'm going to get that back at whatever cost. And then, 3 minutes into what follows, you forget she's naked because you're terrified for her. So at least I think that's what plays.
Yeah, no, I agree. It certainly does play out like that, at least for me. And she's a kind of a sad character in that movie too. I mean,
yeah. She, bless her heart.
Yeah. And I really thought that casting Jamie King I thought she's fantastic in that film.
Yeah, she is. She's great.
Yeah. To think like, because I think when I first heard that she was cast, I was like, well, isn't she like a former model? She's not going to be like a, the small town girl, the girl next door kind of thing, but just nailed it, I
mean, what I always liked about Jamie is that she comes from, she was a model, yes, but she comes from the dark side of being a model. So she has that drama that she can play. She has that life experience that a lot of people don't have. And I feel like you see that in her character. Here's this girl who's who's stuck in a small town, but there's horror in her past, and there's horror in Jamie's past. So I mean, I think that's kind of amazing. And it's, it's been lovely because Jamie and Kyle are still, good friends after all these years. And a lot of times when you do a movie, you don't stay friends with people. It just doesn't happen. But I know that there was a time when I spent a little time sleeping in my car, and I could have called them at any point, and I could have stayed there. There's no doubt in my mind. So I mean, they're that kind of friend. But at the time, I didn't want to, put anybody out. But
I'm definitely going to get to that point, to that article that you wrote here, pretty soon.
All right.
But after coming off of Jason X, it had to feel good to have the #1 horror movie in the country with My Bloody Valentine.
It did. It was nice. It was, again, I felt Messengers was #1, but it didn't feel as #1 because my story by, while I have story by, it kind of meant nothing because, I created something completely different from the Ghost movie that came out. Mm-hmm. And so this was nice. And I remember being, and I don't remember the guy right now, but I remember we were at, I think we did a Q&A or something at one of the theaters. And the guy that was with us was from New Line or from Lionsgate. And he, I remember him being nervous because they had put all of their marketing behind this silly little movie, and it paid off. Mm-hmm. And I remember we were there with him when he got the numbers that night, and he said, "This is what it's going to do." And he was like, "I got a job Monday." So, I mean, we were excited. And it's funny because we thought at that point, oh, well, we finally made it. We have all these meetings lined up, all these things we're going to do. It's going to be great from here on. And for some sad reason, we didn't walk away with a job because it was just considered kind of a fluke because nobody quite knew what to think of this whole 3D thing. Mm-hmm. But I thought the 3D was stunning.
The 3D in that film was very good. Now, there's a lot of the 3D horror movies that came out around after My Bloody Valentine that 3D was awful, or there were movies that were shot normally and then they converted them to 3D, and it's just, oh.
I don't think the conversion ever worked. I mean, maybe it works now, I don't know, but it certainly didn't work back then. But we shot everything in 3D. We had 2 giant refrigerator cameras, and we shot it all in 3D. And I remember the first time we saw footage, because we didn't know until day one. We're watching it, and we're like, wow, we had no idea it was going to look like this. I mean, this is stunning. Because, I mean, there's a moment when the pickaxe goes through the door, and it's like you just see the world through that door. It's just like, it was just mind-blowing. It was, I mean, now it doesn't seem like that big a deal. But back then when we first saw it, it was just, this is nuts. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So we changed writing because of that.
And it was the complete polar opposite for My Bloody Valentine than it was for Jason X, because the marketing for that movie, everywhere. That movie was promoted, and I mean, it was everywhere.
Yeah.
Thank you, Toronto Freddy, for that $2 Canadian super chat. He says, my buddy worked on Jason X FX here in Toronto.
Really?
Wow.
Very nice.
That's very cool. After the success of My Bloody Valentine, I think everybody thought, well, there's got to be a sequel. Surely there's going to be a part 2. And the movie definitely leaves the door open for a sequel. Was it the same issue that happened with Jason X, where there was just that power shift at Lionsgate and the sequel just never happened?
No, I mean, I think the same people were there at the time. I don't know what the answer is. I know we heard a lot of different things. We heard that Lionsgate had not, I think it was Paramount before, but I think they hadn't secured the rights for a sequel because they just didn't expect it to do well. Now, I heard that. I don't know that that's true. I know the guy who was running Lionsgate at the time was colorblind and never understood the movie because he couldn't see in 3D anyway. And it wasn't his genre. It wasn't the kind of thing. What he wanted to do was these big budget romantic comedies and things like that. So it wasn't something that he really wanted to pursue. And if you went back and looked, other than the Saw franchise, Lionsgate didn't do a lot of horror at that point. They just didn't care for it. And which was sad considering that Lionsgate was a big part of horror for a long time. Mm-hmm. But every year we would go back and we pitched to the 2 main executives. We pitched probably 2 weeks before the movie came out, we pitched the sequel. We had it fully fleshed out, and it was, I thought it was great. It was going to take place the moment the first movie ended, and we had talked to Eddie, we talked to Jensen and Kerr and Jamie. They were all coming back, and it would have been a blast. We were even going to bring in the Kurgan, and I don't know if anybody has seen Highlander or not, but because we were going to bring him in as a potential possible minor.
Oh,
But
I love Clancy Brown. That would have been awesome.
we just wanted to do it because we wanted to meet Clancy. But yeah, I mean, it would have been. That's a regret. I mean, that's a regret. Halloween 3D is a regret. That would have been a fun. That would have been a fun movie.
Is there any possibility that My Bloody Valentine 3D 2 will happen?
I mean, every year or so we go back. This is my back scratcher. Every year or so we go back and we'll send an email and say, "Hey guys, it's the 10-year anniversary. It's 15-year anniversary. Hey, what's going on?" And just it never has happened. And we have even gone back and restructured it because now you can't start when the movie ended because we're all 40 years older now.
Right.
But we have restructured it so we could do it. We have a new version basically. If it ever were to happen, we're ready. But I don't know. I mean, I would say never because who knew we would ever get, Big Trouble in Little China or Blade Runner to come back. So, I mean, it's a different world now. Plus, everybody needs content now because nobody's making movies anymore.
Exactly. Absolutely. Yeah. It's just that was another thing that a lot of people mentioned was like, what happened to the sequel? Why was there no sequel? This movie made $100 million at the box office. Fans love it.
Yeah, I know.
Why?
Every meeting we would take at the time, people would be like, "Are you guys not doing a sequel? I mean, isn't that just printing money?" I mean, maybe, but it would have certainly been fun. I mean, I thought we had a great idea. We never wrote the script. So because we weren't getting any work, Patrick, we were talking about, well, what can we do that's 3D? And Patrick came up with sort of the road movie. So that's what started Drive Angry. But the original concept when we pitched these guys in the room that night or that day, we pitched them was, we will do your sequel. We'll do your sequel and you guys will get all the praise and we'll do this. But then we want to do this dirty little road movie. And we'll bring in Tom Atkins to play this guy and Betsy Rue can play the girl. And that's what Drive Angry was. And we'll shoot it for like, 3-4 million and it'll be in 3D and cars and chase. And they were like, "Oh, this is great." So we were going to shoot Valentine's sequel and then everybody stays and then we go shoot, Drive Angry. That was, so you shoot it all at the same time. That was sort of our plan. And, we were going to bring Tom Atkins back because he was like, "Well, I can live without a jaw. I can get a prosthetic jaw." So we were going to bring him back, and Betsy probably wouldn't have been brought back for Valentine, but we bring her for Drive Angry. But things change.
Yeah. I definitely want to talk about Drive Angry because I love Drive Angry. Why that movie was not a hit at the box office, I don't know. I think that movie 10 years from now, 15 years from now, people will come back and look at it, and you'll have one of those cult movies. I just love that movie.
It's a weird thing. I mean, people who see it tend to like it or think it's just batshit.
I think it's both, and I love it.
I agree both. Yeah.
And I knew that Tom Atkins was originally supposed to be the part that Nicolas Cage played. So every time I see the scene with Nicolas Cage, the naked woman, the 45 in one hand, the bottle of Jack in the other, I remove Cage and I insert Atkins. And I just imagine, as good as that scene is, and that scene is phenomenal, how much better it would have been with the Atkins.
I don't think I've ever thought of that in all these years. Because that didn't happen, that whole sequence. I mean, yes, the whole shootout was there and the sex was there, but it was never naked. I mean, it was never the shootout while they're still doing it. That happened while I was actually writing it. Patrick called and said, and he rarely called. We always, and still to this day, we would work over chat because I was up north and he was far away. So he would send me text messages and we'd banter back and forth. Everything was broken on Google Chat. And so then he called one night, which is very rare, and he was like, "They never stop fucking." And I was like, "Okay, I'll call you back." So, and that's because he didn't even have to talk about what he was talking about. I knew exactly what he meant, and because we had that shorthand, and so I just started writing. I do like the fact that, I mean, we went to a lot of different places because our agents felt like we should have a producer, and so we went to a bunch of different producers. We had a guy that we really liked, and then one of our agents called and said, "You know what? We just got a call from Mike DeLuca. He read it. He says you got to meet with him." And so we met with DeLuca, and I felt like it's something we had to do because DeLuca greenlit Jason X, and so we got to go meet with him. And the moment we sat down with him, he's quoting lines, the pink dildo line, he's quoting, I mean, everything about it. And then we said, well, because every producer had their take, like, this is what I would do, and we could do this and do this. We went to DeLuca, we're like, oh, so what do you think? What should we do to it? And he was like, shoot it. So we were like, he's our guy. And so he was our guy.
Well, let's just continue with Drive Angry, because I mean, this,
I'm sorry.
no, this is great. We'll backtrack, but tell us how Nicolas Cage coming on board. That was Mike DeLuca's idea, right?
That was DeLuca, because DeLuca was due or had done Ghost Rider, and so he was already talking to Cage. And he sent Cage the script. Cage read it, and when Cage got to, I mean, we're doing spoilers on this episode, I take it,
yeah,
because but when he got to the point where he gets shot in the eye, he's like, he called DeLuca, and he's like, I'm in, and that's halfway through the movie, not even that far, and he's like, and his reasoning is, I always wanted to get shot in the eye in a movie, and we're like, okay.
That's all it took, hey,
I'm fine with that. But I mean, once he came on, everything changed. Like it was, everything about the movie changed. Now, it was a weird time because specs weren't selling. So we didn't have, this wasn't something that we got rich on. It was, the offer to make this movie was very tiny compared to, a Nicolas Cage movie would be. And so, but we, nobody was working at the time. So we took the deal, and it's the one movie that we made that what is on screen is what we made. Millennium Films can be difficult to work with because they're tight in the way they take care of money, but they gave us wonderful freedom, so we could do whatever we needed to do. Now, there are scenes in the movie that had to change because we just didn't have the money. We had a whole sequence that took place in like on an interstate where there was a car wreck, and Cage and Amber Heard drive up, and there's this wreck, and then suddenly all these guys have guns on them. It was going to rain, and we didn't have any rain days, so we had to move that scene indoors. We moved it into a church, and that became the church scene that now exists. But that all used to take place, on the side of the road, and so we didn't have money to throw at the movie like a lot of people do. So that was, in a lot of ways, it was frustrating, but it was also fun because you had to think your way outside of a box, and that was a box we had to think outside of, and we did that. I mean, Patrick has the better memory than me because he doesn't drink and I do, but I want to say we did that like within a week. We rewrote it, we did everything, we shot it, because we knew the rain was coming, because that's the way the weather works. You knew a few days out, and so we had to change everything. But I may have gone off on a tangent.
No, not at all. There's another sequence in this film that features you with a very beautiful, very naked woman. And I just want to know why you let Patrick Lussier take advantage of you like that.
I know. He's a horrible person.
I felt sorry for you, honestly, when I saw that.
That one we actually did on purpose. That one we wrote that and structured that as an homage to Bloody Valentine. So, I mean, the character's named Frank. So, I mean, it's the same character. And look, it's a fun character. I mean, Amber Heard gets her car from that character. Everybody beats that character up. And I mean, I remember maybe it was after that movie, somebody said, you're pro abuse, you're abusive toward your movies are abusive towards women. And I go, the people in my movie who abuse women, they meet a horrible end. There is a moral to this story. And so Frank does not end up well in that movie.
No,
He should have been nicer.
I love your line in that movie when Fichtner, the accountant, is like hitting you're like, why does everybody keep hurting me?
Well, it's funny because he did that. That wasn't written. That was him just doing that on his own. And my line was on my own. So that was what was great about Fichtner, because Cage is as actors, everybody's different. Cage is one of those guys. He walks on set, and the first day he showed up, he walked directly up to me. He had his little, I don't have one in front of me, but we have these scripts that are about this big. So you've got the entire script right here in your hand. And he comes in, he's got scribbles all over. He's like, I'm thinking about changing this, and this should be different. And he's quoting lines to me like he's already knows every line in the screenplay. And that's on day one. So he walks on to set. He walks on and he does the scene exactly the way it's written, and he's ready to go home at that point. he's done it. Now he'll give you some more, and he'll try some things if you want him to, but he comes in and he's got the character. He's nailed it. And then Fichtner, on the other hand, we would still be shooting Drive Angry if it were up to Fichtner, because he will do over and over, and he'll try different things and do it this way and do it that way. Fichtner's amazing. And I still keep, I'm still in touch with Fichtner. So
yeah, I was going to say that was a great casting choice, because I love William Fichtner in anything.
And he's that guy who deserves to be like people. Oh, I know that guy's face, but he deserves to be the guy that people know who he is.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's got a new movie that he directed with his best friend from. Most people know him from with Kim Coates from.
Sons of Anarchy.
But it's a fantastic movie. It's Brooke, can't remember the name of it right now, Coldbrook. But if you get a chance to check it out, it's a lovely little movie. And Bill shot it and directed it and wrote it, and so it's just lovely.
Very cool, very cool. So Nicolas Cage, when he comes to the set, he's prepared, and
he is prepared.
He has some notes.
He has some notes, and he has some. Like the funniest thing he ever did was he has a scene around a fire, and he's talking about the video feed in hell, and how when you're in hell, the worst part isn't the fire. The worst part is that you see your loved ones, and whatever happens to them, there's nothing you can do about it. But yet you're force fed these images. You can't not see these images. And so, and he was like, he had to watch these guys kill his daughter, and eat her head with a plastic fork, and that wasn't in the script. And I'm sitting there watching this, we're in Video Village with DeLuca and Patrick, and we're they're still shooting, and Patrick's right beside us, and DeLuca's on this side, and DeLuca's like, "Did he say eat her head?" And I was like, "Did he say a plastic fork?" And Patrick's like, "Shh, it'll come out in editing." So Patrick was always calm about it, but that's Cage. That's what Cage will, after he'll give you the first one, but then the second one he's going to do some stuff, and some of it works and some of it don't. Same way with writing. So that's what I loved about Cage. He is fearless.
Yeah. There's so many stories about Nicolas Cage out there that he definitely seems like an interesting cat. So
I mean, I never got in his space. I never went up and got a picture with him. I never did that sort of thing, because with him more than anyone else, he doesn't have a normal life. Like he can't go. We did, the four of us, Patrick, DeLuca, and I, and Nick, went to eat dinner one night at a nice restaurant, and we were there maybe 30 minutes. I mean, after 5 minutes, people start coming up to get autographs, and he was always very gracious. But at about the 30-minute mark, it was like the Beatles. Just they were all drinking it at their own tables, and they were getting a little more free, and it's just, there's a level of entitlement where, here, talk to my wife, and when they're thrusting phones in his face, and it looked so uncomfortable that he's like, okay, so we're done, right? So we're leaving, we're done, and he's paying the bill real quick, and we escort him out to the car, and he leaves, and so we go back in and get the food and go eat them in our hotels.
I can't, I can't imagine that life. And I mean, that's,
I can't either.
yeah, everybody says, I've heard people say, if you want to be rich and famous, just take the rich. You know what I mean? Take the rich, leave the famous.
Yeah, you don't want. I don't think you want that.
Yeah.
The money's probably okay. But there's other ways to make money, so
Yeah.
it's not worth it.
Why do you think Drive Angry didn't perform well at the box office?
I mean, I think people were sick of driving. They were sick of 3D for starters. We used the same 3D camera crew. We didn't have the same effects, so I think our effects were a little shoddy. But I don't think that impacted the movie at all. I think it was just people were tired of 3D for starters. Nick had a bunch of movies come out right before that. I don't think the marketing was very smart. Again, he broke out of hell. At no point in the movie or in the screenplay do we ever say he broke out of hell. We leave it up to the audience because the audience is smart to figure it out. It's something that you don't realize until maybe the last part of the second half. So you're an hour 10, 20 minutes into the movie before that happens, before you start to realize what that means. And they put it on the poster and they put it in the trailer. Why would you do that? I never understood that. It's so hard to write movies that have a twist if you're going to release that in the trailer.
That's one of the big problems with trailers today is that the trailer tells you don't need to watch the movie after you watch the trailer. The trailer tells you everything, and they ruin the twists in the trailer. So what's the point?
Yeah, I don't get it. But I certainly think that. I mean, you look at that and you're like, I mean, Bloody Valentine didn't give anything away.
No.
So, you watch Jason X, the trailer, you watch Drive Angry, the trailer, you kind of get the whole movie. Why go see it? Why bother? There's a lot more in it beyond those things, but it certainly feels like you're being told the whole story. So I don't know. I never understood it. And for instance, that shook us when we saw the trailer. And we didn't know that it was going to be that. We're sitting at Comic-Con when they released it, and we're like, wow, that's, people with Comic-Con had a good response, but it was like, that's just, why would you do that? Why would you release that? And so it was, as a result of that, later, we had to, weeks before the movie came out, we had to put that opening where you see him driving out of hell, because that wasn't in the screenplay. The screenplay was just him chasing these three guys down and killing them. So we have this whole CG moment at the beginning of the movie to justify this trailer that was released at Comic-Con, which is the weirdest thing. So
that's
I wasn't kidding when I said, accountant or lawyer or doctor. They're good professions, very honorable professions.
They are. But again, I think, maybe, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, people will come back around on that movie and be like, whoa, this is, this
I
is
just hope
something.
Yeah, I mean, I from all the way back in Kentucky when I was sitting around the campfire, I like telling stories, and it's kind of sad when you tell a story and nobody's sitting there listening. So it'd be nice if somebody could enjoy it, love it or hate it.
Yeah,
I'm okay with that.
I understand you pitched, I believe it was a television series based on a Stephen King novel after Drive Angry. What?
Yeah, we pitched From a View of Kate.
Oh, I said I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Why did that not happen?
Maybe it sucked. That's certainly a possibility, but I think our timing was off because it was right before Stephen King had his big comeback. It was right before Under the Dome came out, and Under the Dome was successful. So I think people just didn't see it. It's not one of his most well-known books either. Not that I think that would matter, because every Stephen King novel has phenomenal storyline. What I love about King is that his world is, his world from The Stand sort of, expands into a lot of other stuff. And this is one of those worlds where there's things from his other worlds, from the Stephen King world, that exist inside From the View of Kate. And it was great. I mean, we joined forces with DeLuca. DeLuca got this guy to come in and do all this fantastic artwork. So we had these giant boards that we would go in and pitch with we'd never had before. And DeLuca was there every single time. I mean, he pitched, he went in with us, and to have Mike DeLuca in the room when you're pitching, I mean, how we didn't sell this thing, I don't have a clue. But it was, it was good. And plus, Stephen King read our stuff, and so that was fun. So, and it's great because you can option the Stephen King if it's available. You can option the Stephen King story or book for $1, and you get it for a year. So you can do whatever you want for a year. And if you sell it, he's going to make some money. But as a writer, you got your free reign to go do what you want to do.
Oh yeah.
He'll give you notes, he'll give you ideas, he'll give you thoughts, but he's not going to come in and say you're stupid. So I mean, he gives you your freedom.
I think if you pitch that now, like that.
Well, the problem is we don't have the rights to it anymore.
Right. Yeah. Just say I think timing probably was a thing.
Yeah,
I
think it was a timing thing.
Yeah, it kind of seems to me like Stephen King. It comes in there's peaks, but the peaks are super high, and there's valleys, but the valleys are never that low. But when he's at a peak, Stephen King everything.
Yeah.
So, but was Patrick Lussier part of that part of the pitch too? Okay.
Yeah, we came up with it together and went out and pitched it together.
Cool.
With DeLuca.
In 2015, you wrote a piece for Birth Movies Death. Detailing the peaks and valleys of being a working screenwriter and how you went from having the #1 horror movie in the country to living out of your car.
I did.
That was the.
It wasn't as fancy as this nice shed.
No, I'm sure it was. It was a Prius, right?
It was a Prius.
Okay.
Blue in color.
Do you still own it?
No, it was a lease.
Okay.
Which became kind of problematic. I probably wouldn't have slept in the car had it not been a lease.
I remember reading that article, and I was just absolutely captivated. And that was when I was like, gosh, I really want to sit down and talk with this guy and detail everything. Because for me, that story was really moving. Because like you said earlier, you had friends that could have given you a couch to sleep on or a guest room to sleep in, or, could have even, thrown you some cash. But throughout all of it, you never gave up. You kept your sense of humor, or at least it seemed like you did via the article, and you maintained your dignity. I remember you talking about you were at this party and there were all these, very well-to-do Hollywood people there. And you felt like such an outcast. Yeah. And all of those people could have helped you if you just said, hey, I need help. But you didn't. And I don't know, I really respected you because of that.
I appreciate that. I don't deserve that.
What was it that prompted you to write that article? Because a lot of people who were probably in the same boat as you wouldn't have done it, or wouldn't have done it as candidly.
Well, I mean, it goes back to the blog that you read. I knew, having experienced it, I felt like I can't be the only guy who has written all this stuff, and suddenly, and it's not like, I had money. I'm in LA. I didn't have enough money. It was one of these weird storms that brewed in, and it just, like I say, I had a Prius that I was leasing, so I was paying for it every month, but I could only drive so many miles. So I could have stayed with Tyler Mears, and they wanted me to stay there. They were upset that I wouldn't stay there. And I was like, I don't have the miles. I can't afford to drive that far and drive back to work, because I'd taken a job. I wasn't making any money, so I took a job at Toyota. I was calling people every day to say, how was your service? I hope you will give us a 10 out of 10. And that's what I would do every day. And I did that for a year and slept in my car for a year. And, I knew that there had to be other people like that. So once I got out of that situation, I had a couple of little jobs that came through that allowed me to walk away from that job. And my daughter was living with her mom in Memphis, and so I was sending money back there, and I couldn't really afford to fly back there that much. And so once I made a little bit of money, I moved back there, and I stayed in one of the extra bedrooms, and I stayed there, and I started writing again, and sort of got things back, got back on my feet. But it was the idea of writing that was nagging me, because even friends that I grew up with in Kentucky, that like, oh, you're rich now, you're this now, and it's like, that's a lie. That's not true. That's not, just because you've had a movie, that doesn't mean, I think I made 50-ish grand for Jason X when I wrote that. I had been working for Sean, so I was drawing a weekly paycheck, but it's not like I made, 300 grand off of it. I made 50 grand. And for, when I wrote The Messengers, I think I made 80 grand. And so, I've never been one of the guys that made, $1 million off something. It was always, I was making enough money and it's expensive to live out here.
Mm-hmm.
So I was making enough money to get from paycheck to paycheck. It was just a much bigger paycheck that I was stretching. And so, I spoke to Dean Laurie about it. I spoke to Patrick about it. No, I didn't speak to Patrick about it because he didn't know. He was off doing Punisher. I talked to Dean about it because he was the guy who sort of let me into the business. And I didn't want to go to anyone and ask for help, because I didn't want people to be worried. I didn't want them to, like, especially with Patrick, he was doing a Terminator movie. I mean, that was the dream, Mm-hmm. I mean, it was, yes, we love horror, but Terminator is a horror movie. Right. A lot of people don't want to say that, but it really is. There is a monster chasing you. And he was working on this lovely time travel thing that there was no way I was going to say, oh, by the way, while you're at the best moment of your life, I'm sleeping in my car. Mm-hmm. So I didn't say anything to him about it. So, if I had to go back and do it again, I'd still do it the same way. I would never say that. And I only told Dean because he figured it out. And I only told Tyler because he figured it out, because I was around them enough. Patrick was gone, and so he couldn't figure it out. And so, I don't know. So I talked to Dean about it. I'm writing this thing. I talked to a friend of mine, Ida, who now is my future wife. And I wrote the story. And I was going to publish it on Wendigo. And I reached out to, it was Badass Digest at the time. And I said, I'm going to, do you want to post this? And it was Devin there at the time, Faraci, who, everybody hates. Although I think he's cleaned up his act quite a bit. But anyway, I reached out to him and I said, do you have any interest in this? He said, I would be honored to post this. And so by noon the next day, I was like, oh, I've made a mistake. Everybody in Hollywood had read it. And so.
Did a lot of people reach out to help? I mean, in the article you mentioned that you're only you always want to put off the airs that you're successful, even if you're not not successful.
Yeah.
And so I mean, did you have a lot of people reach out to help? Did any offers or anything like that come of it?
I had a lot of offers to talk about it. I had a lot of offers to print, video, media. I had a lot of that. And I said no to all of it because it's not why I did it. I didn't do it to, and I think that's the thing. Some of the people who were the most upset that I thought I was doing it for press. I wasn't doing it for press. I was doing it to say, if you're in this situation, you're not alone. And what ended up happening was I had thousands of Facebook messages, private, thousands of emails, not thousands of emails and thousands, but altogether I had thousands of messages that were, your article meant everything because I was in that place 2 years ago or 4 years ago, or I'm in that place now. And some people who had much bigger careers and lost everything, lost houses, lost families, lost wives. I mean, it was just a floodgate. And for the next couple of months, all I did was respond to those. That's I had a job where I was writing, but I would work on that in the morning and in the afternoons. I would reply to all these things. and lots of people. I mean, and it's there's I don't want to mention any of them, but people that and a lot of them were just people that were like, we never reached that point, but we thought we were almost on the edge of it a few times, and so I don't regret writing it. And yeah, if somebody doesn't want to hire me because I told that story, well, they can just have their lovely lives without me. That's fine.
Yeah.
But it was a story I felt like that needed to be told, and I told it.
And it's a great story. If you guys haven't read that article, look it up. It's very good, very, very good.
Well, thank you.
The pandemic has impacted a lot of businesses, of course, the movie business as well. We've seen a steady decline in physical media. The pandemic may put the death knell into the theatrical experience. What do you think the future of film distribution is going to look like?
I mean, for a long time, it's going to be Netflix and Amazon Prime and Hulu, and that's just what it's going to be. I think drive-ins could make a comeback, but I don't know to what degree. I'm not going to go to. I see a lot of people who are saying it's fake and it's a hoax and it's that sort of thing, and that's great. They can say whatever they want. I know that Hollywood is all about money, and the productions that are happening right now, they are taking every precaution. They are spending money to make sure. They are like the idea to fly your cast and crew to a location, because nobody's shooting in America right now, by the way, because we're the worst. So it's everything is Ida, my love, is about to fly to Croatia and other places. And when she gets there, she's going to go on lockdown. She's going to go on quarantine. So they're being paid to stay in a hotel room until we know you're not sick. The idea that Hollywood would spend that kind of money if this was a hoax is stupid. So it ain't a hoax. So wear your mask. I know you're wearing yours. But I think it's totally going to change the way that the movies are done. It was already sort of changing because Netflix and Amazon Prime and Hulu, you can watch quality feature film and television, but quality feature film, which is what you used to go to the theater to see, you can watch at home. Mm-hmm. You don't have the same experience. It's not the same as to have thunder going on all around you and popcorn and that sort of thing. But for the time, that's the world we live in, and that's just that's our generation's call. We don't have to go parachute into Normandy. We just need to wear a mask, because the countries, if everybody would wear their mask, then this probably wouldn't have been this bad. And we could be back to work right now. Now we can and will go shoot in Ireland. We've just today we finalized our well, not finalized. We still have some other things to do. We have a production company in Ireland now, so we can go over there and we can shoot films. Ireland was smart about how they handled everything. And so, and it wasn't until a plane from Texas showed up and got 24 new people sick that, but we're not going to do that. We're going to show up. Everybody's going to go on quarantine. We're going to have, if something goes wrong and somebody gets sick, production's going to shut down for 2 weeks. We will have that in the budget because we're going to put the cast and crew first, because why wouldn't we? Yeah. So everything is going to change, but, things are going to be slow here in the States, I think. I don't see any other way around it. I know of a production that was supposed to happen in Texas, and because of the numbers this week, it got shut down. So.
Well, let me backtrack for just a minute here. You mentioned it earlier. You and Patrick were working on a Halloween 3 screenplay that was supposed to be a direct follow-up to Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, to which my question is, how the hell are you going to follow up Rob Zombie's Halloween 2? But tell us a little bit about that project, because that was another one that was all over the horror websites for a long time, and then it just kind of disappeared.
It is a huge, huge, huge regret, because we had Bob had reached out to us quite early, and I think Rob was in the shooting, and he reached out to us and said, "Could you start thinking about the sequel?" And the sequel to Rob's movie. And so what we did was we planned it And look, it's nothing against Rob. Rob created a very unique, very interesting take on Halloween. It's not the take I would have done, just like he probably wouldn't have put Jason in space. And so, and that's great. I like that Halloween, Rob Zombie's Halloween doesn't mess up John Carpenter's Halloween. It's still there. So, you can experience both. And I did experience both. But what we were going to do was take it back to the shape. So the first 30 minutes of our screenplay was basically opens on the end of Rob's movie. And what ends up happening is when you think Jason is killing Loomis, it's actually her killing Loomis. And when she realizes it, he slips the mask over her head. She walks outside. She pulls the mask off, and the world goes into 3D because we were going to do it as a 3D movie. And then the next 20 minutes are this ending to Rob Zombie's movie. It's Tyler Mane. It's this big hulking T-Rex going after everybody. And at the end of that sequence, where all these people die and it's lots of blood and guts, because that's what we like in the horror genre, at the end of that, Tyler Mane is on fire. Kirk is melting into his face, and he goes off. He's in an ambulance, and he goes off a cliff into a big, off of a dam, and falls, and he's burning. And so that's the last we've seen. The next time we see him, we're in one of the pop-up Halloween stores, and you see this kid with the Kirk mask, and he's like, "What do we do with this thing? There's only one left." And the guy's like, "Just leave it on the shelf. Somebody will buy it." Puts it on the shelf, and he turns, and there's this figure over him, and then he gets killed, and then I think we had him killed with the rear view mirror where images are closer than they appear, and he's having the crep, because in 3D that looked really cool. And then you just see the hand come in and grab the mask. And so the next time we see the shape, it's the shape, but it's Tyler Mane, so it's like way up here, but it's still he's the dick again. He's not the T-Rex breaking your door. He's smart about it. So anyway, that was the whole thing. We had Tom Atkins, of course. He would be playing a doctor at a psych ward, because that's where, and we would have brought back I'm having a brain fart. Scout.
Oh, Scout.
Brought back Scout. So Scout would have been in an insane asylum, and Atkins was going to be the doctor there. We had a great death for Atkins, a great 3D death involving an aquarium and a bunch of fish and his severed head. It was lovely. I was going to be in there. I was going to play an orderly and not take my pants off this time.
Wow. And
we had this great sequence where Michael cuts my head off, and he grabs my head and throws it at somebody, so my head's coming at you in 3D. That would have been fun. So that was a huge regret.
Why didn't it happen?
We wrote the script. We had it all fleshed out. We knew exactly what it was. I wrote the script in 8 days, and it was literally every single waking moment I was writing. I slept in my office. I ate in my office. Everything was there, and I was just writing the script for 8 days. Patrick, Gary, Tunnicliffe, people were being hired, cast was being done, and this was all pre-Christmas, before we would shoot Drive Angry in January. So we were trying to wrap the movie before Christmas. So it all had to be done fast. So I wrote the movie, finished the movie, and I actually wrote it, and Patrick went through and did his quick polish, and we did that before we were supposed to turn it in. I think we turned it in on like a Saturday, and it was supposed to be turned in on a Monday. Had we turned it in on a Monday, we would have never gotten paid, because they were going to pull the plug Monday morning. And but we turned it in early, and so there was a struggle. But anyway, the reasoning that it happened was that the Weinsteins were going to run out of money. They were not doing good at the time, and I think Bob had come to Patrick, and Patrick has a long history with the Weinsteins editing their movies, and he said, look, we probably are not going to have the money to do this, which means you'll go into production, we will run out a movie, and Drive Angry will get screwed. So you guys will get doubly screwed. You won't get Halloween, and you won't get Drive Angry. So you should come back to us after Drive Angry. And it was sad, but we actually thought we would go back and do it after Drive Angry. We didn't. We ended up working on Hellraiser. I don't know why.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about the Hellraiser project that you worked on with with the Weinsteins also.
When we pitched it as, if I can remember this, we pitched it as three different posters. You had a poster of the toy,
The box.
the box, and it was just that, and it said the hole is what it said, and then we had a picture of Fichtner sitting on a throne with a gun in one hand. It's one of those thrones with the big. So he's just sitting back. He's got the gun in one hand, and he's got nails, like gnarly, construction or cross tie nails sticking out of his head with blood curling down. And then it said, "The rabbit, how far are you willing to go?" And the idea was, and I can tell you this now because it's never going to be made, but the idea was you're watching the movie and you're watching this human who at the end of the first act ends up getting these nails driven into his head. And he's after the cube, he's after the box. And so you get the idea. I mean, we're telling you that he's Pinhead, that this is a prequel, because we didn't want to mess with, what was there, because you've always got that. But you find later he ends up meeting Pinhead, and you realize, oh crap! And now Pinhead is running the underworld. He's become something completely different, and more powerful. So Fichtner would end up becoming the new Pinhead, basically, the new controller of the world. And so, but it was very adult. It was Fichtner and his ex-wife and their very adult story and drama, which was very similar to the first movie. And we turned that outline in. It was like a 40-page outline. And Bob and Harvey at that point had seen, they'd seen, I think they had seen Priest. Do you remember Priest?
Yeah.
With what's his name?
I can't think of his name.
But it's a big budget thing, and it's big budget CGI. That's what they wanted, so that's why we gave them that story. But then they had seen some other movie, and I can't remember what it was. And they came back and we said, well, we really want it to be more like this. So can you make it a little younger? And so what we did was we took the wife out and we put in a daughter, and the daughter and all of her friends. And so we did that. And then Final Destination 17 came out, and they saw that, and that was a big success. And so they came back to us and they said, you know what we really want are teens. You make it all about teens. And at that point, we're frustrated because we got paid a pretty good chunk of money for these outlines, or for the first outline. And everybody was like, just write the next outline so that they'll take you the script and you can get your next chunk of money. Because that's what Hollywood had become. Sometimes working with the Weinsteins was like that. And so we did the teen version, which, by the way, was not a bad story considering. It's not my favorite by any means. But we did that. And then it just never got made. So we never went to script. We never did anything else. And a lot of people asked, did you guys know what was going on with Harvey at the time? I didn't know anything. And neither did Patrick. I mean, we didn't know. I remember hearing a rumor that he had told this story about this actress that had given him sexual favors. And I remember thinking, well, that's not true, because I know what she looks like and I know what Harvey looks like. So it never occurred to me that here's this guy using his power to get his way in the industry. That didn't go into my brain. I just thought he was lying. I just thought he was one of those guys saying, yeah, the fish was this big. Right, it was.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So what was... So the process of working with, I mean, everybody's heard about the Harvey Scissorhands and all the stories of, working with the Weinsteins and how horrible it is. Your experience with them would you say it's overall positive, negative, middle of the road?
For the most part, it was positive. I mean, when it came to Halloween 3D, they didn't want to pay us. And so the lawyers had to get involved, and I'd heard that story and I thought we really thought they would never do that to Patrick, because he has come in and saved a bunch of their movies. And I mean, he still has the old versions of Cursed, which people are dying to see.
Uh-huh.
But I mean, he has all of that stuff because and I remember he used to joke about the fact that they would come to him and say, "We want you to do this," and he would say no. And I was like, "Why are you passing on this? That's a great movie." I think it was the fairy tale thing with I'm always horrible with names. The Grimm's fairy tale thing, the Grimm brothers or whatever it's called.
Yeah, the Brothers Grimm. The Brothers Grimm.
So they'd come to him to do that, and he was like, "Nah, I don't want to do it." And I was like, "Why wouldn't you take that? That's going to be a big movie." And he was like, "They're going to come back to me to fix it, and I'll make more money." And they did. And so the problem with that is, he used to say, when you start with shit, you really, how much can you do to fix it? But he always made the movies better. So anyway, we thought they would never screw him because he'd done so many movies. I mean, he did Scream for them. That saved Wes Craven. I mean, it was just his editing that opening scene. So we ended up going to the lawyers, and the lawyers went and I remember there was a point when we got an email from our agent saying, "I just got off the phone with them, and they're saying, look, we'll give you everything we owe you, but $10,000. You got to trust us on this. We'll give you everything we owe you, but $10,000." And Patrick and I both responded within seconds of each other, and having not talked to each other, F you. And we didn't say F. And so we had our money by the end of the day. So now we were told, by the way, if you guys do this, you'll never work for the Weinsteins again. But I think they loved it. To them, it was never about movies. It was always about the gamble. It's always about the poker game. That's what they were playing. And you look back now at what we know, everything was poker to them. Sex was poker to them. And so anyway, they came back to us for Hellraiser, and we made money then. So it was fine.
But I can't imagine the amount of time, and you seemed like you were very excited about the Halloween 3D. You put all that work and effort into it. You're working 8 days straight. You don't leave your office, and then it's just like, nah, we're not going to do it. I mean, I can imagine that just being crushing. It's
frustrating, but here's the thing: if I could go back, knowing what I know now, I would never work with them. I mean, what they've done is just and I don't know what Bob knew and what he didn't, but that's the thing I like about the horror genre is there always has been in horror, there are consequences to bad people, and that's what I like about it. In the originals of horror, it was always the virgin that survived. Now, you may not go that far into the religion of it, but still, I always liked the morality of horror. It doesn't seem to exist in a lot of other genres sometimes. And so I like that. And so the fact that these guys were making movies and benefiting from it in that genre, it's just disgusting. But anyway, that's me. That's mine. We don't have to get into my politics. We're in this nice shed where we should be celebrating.
Exactly. You worked again with Patrick Lussier recently on Trick. Can we expect more films from the former Lussier connection in the future?
Absolutely. We chat all the time. We still talk all the time. He's got a TV show that he's pushing in Canada. I've got a bunch of stuff that I'm pushing as well. But we still have things like we have a script that went out yesterday, the two of us. We have 2 projects that will probably fall under my umbrella when we go to Ireland. I have a big rock and roll biopic that I'm doing on my own, and but I'd love for Patrick to be involved. But yeah, I mean, we've got Patrick and I have 2 horror scripts. One is done that just went out yesterday, and then we've got one that he's on the ending of it right now, because we started it before the pandemic hit, haven't done anything with it. And then he said, because how do I put this? It was very contained, and the end of the movie was going to not be contained, like it was going to go out into the world. And we've decided, because of the pandemic, we're going to bring that back in and have it contained. And he had an idea for that, so he's working on that right now, because that's what it's going to be. People refer to it as the bubble. You have to be able to shoot in a bubble. You have to be able to keep your cast and your crew safe not only for their health, but for production and everybody else making money. Because if somebody gets sick, then the whole production shuts down. So we have to be smart about how we do this and still deliver great content. And it's possible. Story is story. You don't have to jump off of a skyscraper and, thunder through cities, and you can tell good quality stories without having to do that. I mean, take a look at, have you seen the thing on Disney Plus about The Mandalorian, the behind the scenes?
No.
Where they shot that? Check it out if you get a chance, because it'll blow your mind how they shot all that. It's crazy.
I love The Mandalorian, by the way.
It's fantastic. But watch that, and I think it's episode 4. When you get to that and you see how they did it, it will blow your mind. It's going to change everything. So people make fun of Lion King, the live action, and Faber's stuff that he's done. He did all of that in preparation for this Mandalorian. I mean, the man's a genius as far as I'm concerned. But cool. I don't know if you've noticed, I tend to have an opinion.
Nothing wrong with that. So, but it sounds like you've definitely got a lot of irons in the fire, solo irons and irons with Mr. Lucier. So that's cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Well, if anybody out there in the chat has any questions that they'd like to ask Mr. Farmer, go ahead and post those in the chat now. Do you have any words of encouragement or advice that you would give to any aspiring screenwriters out there, aside from be a doctor or a lawyer or something?
The biggest issue is just live your life. You don't have to go to school to be a screenwriter. I mean, it's interesting, it's cool. I mean, but if you're trying to relate to you in Kentucky or somebody else in Canada, or film school's not going to get that. What's going to get that is, going through life, going through struggles, live your life. I love going to Disneyland, not necessarily, well, yes, I love going to ride the rides, but I also like people watching. And, there's a lot to be said about going somewhere where you can watch people, and just life experience is what makes good writers. And the worst is the best sometimes. So the fact that I've been through a lot of crap, it's nothing compared to what some people out here listening have gone through. You can be a much better writer than me because your own personal crap that you've had to go through. You can relate to people I can't. And so that's why life experience is so important. And plus, read like crazy. Read every script you can get your hands on. Read every novel you can get your hands on. It's always good to watch movies, of course, but still reading scripts and seeing how it's done, seeing how structure works, that's really important. And a lot of people don't read as much as they used to. So, I mean, I did this because I read I read Reservoir Dogs. And when I read that, it blew my mind. It wasn't the story necessarily that blew my mind. It was the medium. It was the structure. It was how this worked. And I was like, wow. And that I was hooked ever since. I mean, I was hooked the moment I saw Alien, the moment I saw Jaws. I knew I wanted to be a storyteller. But when I read that screenplay, holy crap, that was amazing. I was like, I can do that. I don't have the patience for $500. I wish I had the patience for $500. I don't have the patience for that kind of novel, but I have the patience for a screenplay. It's 100 pages, 110 pages, 120 tops. Yeah, I can do that in a weekend, can't you? So just keep writing.
It's interesting that you mentioned Tarantino, because for me, when I was, 14 or 15, I saw True Romance.
Oh,
and that was the movie that sort of indicated to me that a movie could be more than just entertainment.
Oh, yeah.
And that somebody really talented wrote this.
And he was pissed about it.
Yeah, yeah.
It was all out of order for him.
Yeah.
But what an amazing movie.
Yeah. But I remember thinking, like, gosh, the dialogue and these characters, they're just jumping off the screen. Somebody really talented wrote this. Somebody with a very, unique visual style directed this. The acting is fantastic. The cast is awesome.
The cast, Elvis is in the movie.
Exactly. But it opened my eyes to the fact that a movie could be more than entertainment, and that there's parts to a movie. Somebody wrote it, somebody's directing it.
It's great that you say that, because the screenplay that I bought had Pulp Fiction and True Romance, but Pulp Fiction was first, so that's what I read first. And so
I've seen that book. I've not read
it. It's like red and yellow. I don't have it anymore, but I remember I saw it at the store back when they had bookstores,
Yeah.
and back when you could actually go out in public, and it was it just blew my mind. Absolutely, and that's what I started writing right after I read that. I think I was still reading it when I started writing. And by the way, I had no idea what I was doing. I just started writing, and 40 pages into it, I had no structure, no plot had revealed itself. But that can be taught, and so.
Yeah, that's awesome. Let's see. We've got a good question here from Aaron Lewis. He wants to know, what is Todd's greatest influence, film, book, or person?
Aaron. It's a good name. It's my sister's name. I think the biggest, as far as movies are concerned, well, if we go back before that, it's a combination of Bernie Wrightson and Stephen King, because I grew up in a very religious, somewhat religious environment, and horror, like I couldn't own Fango. I couldn't have that. But I remember getting a Swamp Thing comic, and just Bernie's art. It's just all these creatures that were out in the swamp just blew my mind. And then to read Stephen King, my first Stephen King, I think, was Salem's Lot, and it just blew my mind. And then to see Stephen King and Bernie Wrightson joined forces to do this X-Men comic book, and their 2 pages was just the most disgusting thing ever. And I was like, oh, okay, this is what I got to do. I got to tell stories. This is it. And then, Jaws. The movies that, I don't have favorite movies, but the movies that made me, that influenced me the most, was Jaws, Alien, and Halloween. And you probably have to throw Star Wars in there. I mean, that was the time period, when I was, born in the late '60s, so Star Wars was, I was at the age when that was a thing. But those are the movies that influenced me the most. So, very good question, Aaron. That's what made me what I am.
I like to say that Kentucky is the shining buckle of the Bible Belt. So it's always interesting when I have people come into my man cave here, my horror room, to see their reactions. And most of them take it pretty, they're just like, oh, you like movies, huh? And I'm like, a little bit. And then there's always the guy that I had the internet guys over here not long ago, and the one guy would not turn his back to me. If he would not turn his back to me, and he would kind of look to see where I was to make sure so I mean, he's
got to bless his little heart.
I know. I mean, he saw this and he must have thought, okay, this guy is going to kill me and eat me. He's going to eat my head with a plastic fork or something. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, but it's always interesting to be the horror loving guy in an area that doesn't particularly care for horror.
Yeah.
So
no, I can understand that. But I mean, I've always found that the people, when the crap hits the fan, I would rather have the horror people on my side than any of the other genres. They know how to survive. They know that life is important.
It's very true. Very, very true.
And,
Anthony Jordan wants to know, what's your favorite script that you've written?
That's a good one. It's a good one. What is the favorite script? Drive Angry's up there. Drive Angry was a lot of fun. Halloween 3D was a tremendous amount of fun. There's an old William Castle movie called I Know Who You Are, I Saw What You Did, or it's I Saw What You Did and I Know Who You Are. I can't remember which one, but we wrote that as a remake. And with Tom Atkins as one of the roles,
of course.
We wrote it for Silver Pictures, the Castle Rock. I think it was Castle Rock, and I regret that one never got made. That was a fun script. We wrote. Our version of Ghost Rider, I think, would have been lovely, and that would have been with Nick. That would have been the sequel to the original. That was a lot of fun. I mean, it's a weird one for me because if I'm going to spend the time to write a screenplay, then, I mean, it's it's going to become a favorite. I mean, and I don't know that. Like, I won't do something if I don't think it's a good one. I've only done that once. I did one job that could have been great, and it was at a time, I think I told you before, that there was a time when new writers were coming in and they were making whatever changes they were asking. They were doing it for a lot less money. And so I realized that I'd lost a couple of jobs because I was fighting. And so I stopped fighting and I made the changes it was for a movie called Clock Tower based on the video game. Mm. And I got paid and I wrote it and they kept giving me notes and I stopped arguing and I just made the changes and it was horrible. And it was so much not fun to do it. And so now I'm back to fighting and writing what I like. But, I mean, those are the ones that stand out. But everything I've written has been so much fun. We wrote this one thing, Patrick and I, about a guy who kills his wife in the opening of the movie. And when the lawyer shows up to defend him, he says, I had to, she was a vampire. And through the whole movie, you don't know if he's telling the truth or not, or if was she really a vampire? And you got all these cultists in the background. And so at the end, there's this big reveal. It was so much fun. Dig it, man.
That would that sounds
Anyway, excellent
fun.
Question.
Yeah.
I wish there was just one answer, but there's not.
One thing that you mentioned to me last week when we were talking, you were talking about all the projects that you're working on, but you said, yeah, the hard part's getting paid.
Yeah.
Is that
always.
That's always the most difficult part of being a screenwriter is getting paid?
Yeah, I mean, so many hoops have to be jumped through just to get to that place. And there are so many things that can go wrong that you have no control over. So yeah, I mean, that's getting paid. It's not that they don't pay when it's not like, okay, we're going to pay you and then they don't. I've heard those horror stories. I've never really faced that. I mean, when they said they were going to pay, they pay. The problem is getting them to the point where to say, okay, let's sign the paperwork and let's pay. That getting to that point has been the biggest challenge, I think. And it would be okay. I mean, I still have so much respect for people who have a day job and are still going home every night and writing. At least I've been fortunate enough, except for that 1 year, where I, for the most part, have been able to pay my bills as a writer. And some years have been tighter than others, but I've been fortunate. I've been very lucky. And I know that now. There's a lot of writers out there way better than I ever dreamed about being. And they just haven't had the opportunity and haven't had the luck that I've had. And that's the truth. And at the same time, there's just the opposite. There's a bunch of crap writers out there who are getting work all the time. And now, granted, that's just an opinion. Maybe I don't like their scripts or I don't like their movies. It's just opinion, but still, it's out there because statistically it has to be. But yeah, getting paid can be a pain.
My buddy Nico says, no question, but just a thank you for Jason X, My Bloody Valentine 3D, and an inspiring 2 hours of great conversation.
And who is that again?
That's my buddy Nico Medes.
Well, thank you. Is that a sir?
Yes.
I think it's a sir. Okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah. Thanks, Nico. Appreciate that, man.
Thank you so much.
Let's see if we got any more questions here for Mr. Farmer. My friend Jamie. She'd like to ask you if you are a fan of David Lynch movies.
Oh, I love David Lynch movies. The crazier, the better, as far as I'm concerned.
Of course. I really liked A Straight Story, and that's about as straight as Lynch gets.
That's as straight as it's ever going to be.
Yeah.
He's doing the I forget the I use it sometimes the where he does a teaching thing, the online teaching course. So
yeah, that's cool. Yeah. Let's see if there's any other questions here. I don't see any other questions that we really haven't gone over already. Okay. Scary Jerry says that Jason X was the very first horror film he saw in theaters.
How did that go, I wonder?
Yeah, Scary Jerry, how'd that go?
Was it scary because you were all alone in the theater and it was dark? Because that can be scary.
Jerry also wants to know, did you pick out the kills in Jason X? Was all the kills in the movie in your screenplay, or did you guys kind of come up with those on the set?
we came up with those. I mean, Noel came up with the face freeze, and he came up with the face freeze while I was in Toronto, so that wasn't in the movie. The screw was a result of one of the artists drawing this big piece of equipment. We were like, oh, well, there's this drawing, and the drawing exists somewhere. There's a drawing with this gigantic screw. And we're like, well, I mean, you got to use that. If you're going to go to the trouble of building it, you got to use it. Yeah, I mean, a lot of them, certainly the VR scene. And I love the VR scene because I like to be able to brag that Dove and I are the only two actors to die twice in a Friday movie. And that was fun. Granted, the first one was just VR, but still, it was fun. And I still have my severed head, which has now been in 3 movies.
Hey, you know.
So I got that going for me.
You should get some residuals from the head usage, you know.
From the head. I shouldn't say anything about it because I'm almost certain New Line will come back and say, technically, we own that head, so you owe us. So.
There was something I was going to ask you too about the VR scene where Jason X goes back to Crystal Lake 1980 with the 2 lovely ladies, which I mean, who doesn't love that sequence? Yeah. I'd heard, wasn't there was an idea to bring back Jason's mother for that scene too, and a couple other ideas for the VR?
Yeah, in the original draft, I'd written it so that she's the last thing that they create. So you've got I think you've got Sunaran sitting at the computer trying to figure out, ways of distracting Jason so that they could do whatever it is they were trying to do. And they throw some crazy stuff. Like at one point they threw this giant furry bunny at him. Like that's what they create. I have no idea what I was thinking, but there was that. He hacks through that. And then they end up throwing then they end up putting, because he's doing the research while he's doing all this stuff. And so he ends up bringing back Pamela, and she's in the water and she's drowning. And then I had Uber Jason walk out into the water, and you think, well, obviously he's going to save his dear mom. And he dunks her, and she's thrashing, and he holds her under until she's just floating there dead. And you should have seen Jimmy and Sean's faces. It is like I punched their own mothers when I did this. They were like, you can't do that. Why can't I do that? You cannot. The only consistent in Friday the 13th is Jason's mom. And I was like, well, it shouldn't be now. Jason has changed. He has physically changed, and we're going to show how he mentally changes. And they're like, no, not going to happen. So didn't happen. Now we were going to have her in the movie, and then they couldn't reach a deal financially. So it didn't happen. So we wrote her out. But that was always my, like at that point I was like, really? Cowards? Kill her. Dunk her. Because, I mean, can you imagine what the fans would have done? They already hate me. Might as well justify the hate.
There you go. You would have gotten some hate from that. No
Yes,
doubt.
I would have.
No doubt.
I would have accepted that hate.
I also remember something I remember from the commentary you guys did for the film is how Jim could never pronounce Sonarin the way that you do it. So what he called him Sunaran? Sunaran,
like,
yeah.
Dude, do you call it I can't remember. Did he say Sunaran? He said Sunaran. Yeah, he kept calling it Sunaran. And I was like, because it was or Tsunaran. I think he kept. I was like, is it a Tusami?
Yeah.
It's a tsunami. But anyway, I all of the names were just driving them all nuts. A lot of the names came from what was I playing at the time? Warcraft. No, EverQuest. I was playing EverQuest.
Okay.
Like, by the way, I don't say this a lot. I was so pissed off that we were making Jason X because I had to stop playing EverQuest to go do the movie. But a lot of my friends on the game, Waylander, Sonaran, Lowe, Professor Lowe, although it was spelled Yello, and then everybody kept calling it Yellow. I was like, fine, I'll change the freaking spelling because nobody can say it. The Y is silent.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
That's great. My buddy Lorne, who is a huge Jason X fan. He's a huge. His name is Lorne.
Lauren.
He's an author, published author.
Awesome.
Huge Jason X fan. I think he ranks it like his 3rd favorite of the Friday films.
So an author and crazy.
Yes, definitely crazy.
Okay, good.
He says
Like-
he would like to know if you've read the novel sequels to Jason X from Black Flame.
I have the first one. I never read it.
Oh.
I never read it because it was uncomfortable to read it because I didn't have anything to do with them. Not that it mattered. I mean, I'm sure they're great. I just, sometimes, and at the time, are there new ones out? How many are out?
I think there's a few of them out. Yeah.
Really? I didn't know that. Maybe I should grab them. Okay, I will. I'll do that. Are they on Audible? Because
That's a good question.
probably not. Probably not. Why would you put a Jason X novel on Audible? Now from Audible, Jason X Part 7.
Did you know that they were developing a Jason X level, like the Grendel and a Jason X playable Jason, or Uber Jason playable Jason for the game?
I did know that.
It's unfortunate that never happened, because that could have definitely brought a lot more eyes to Jason X, I think.
Yeah. I mean, it was. I knew it at the time because I was doing a bunch of video game stuff at the time, and I remember Derek and I did this live streaming. Derek Mears and I did this live streaming where we were playing. There was no Uber Jason, but we were playing the game, and I just remember thinking, "This is the worst thing ever," because we don't know how to play, and everybody's just showing up, just kicking our butts. It was sad.
Yeah, it's too bad that never happened. But I really think that would have brought. I mean, one of the best things about that game was that it introduced the Friday the 13th series to a whole new generation.
Yeah, I mean, the game was fun, and I thought it was really smart the way they did it. It was very fun. It's a weird thing because having worked on it, I don't go there because it feels like a job. So I don't go to that world for like my downtime and I enjoyed playing the game, but I don't play it now because I don't know. It's just a weird thing. Like I would be the same thing with Hellraiser, the same thing with Halloween. Stuff where you spend a lot of your time working. It's hard for me to get enjoyment. Now I can go see the movies. Like I'll go see the next Halloween movie. I'll be the first there. But it's different to sit there and play a game. I don't know why that is. I should talk to a therapist about that. Do you do therapy?
No. What did you think of Halloween 2018?
I loved it. I had a blast. I thought it was great. It was fun. I loved having Castle back. I mean, everything about it I thought it was smart. There was one legitimate spot where I actually jumped out of my seat. I can't remember what there's a kid at the window or something, and something happens. There's a jump moment, and I just lost it. But I thought it was great. I thought it was fun and brutal, and it felt like The Shape again. I mean, I was very, very happy about it.
And it's too bad now that Halloween Kills has been pushed back, and Halloween Ends has now been pushed back. So
yeah, but I mean, they'll figure something out. I mean, Blumhouse is very smart with the way they make movies. I think Malik is great. He's very protective of the franchise. He's very protective of Jason. I think whatever they end up doing, I'm sure it'll be great.
Yeah. Well, actually, somebody mentioned Blumhouse. Would you ever work for Jason Blum, or have they asked you to write anything? Joe Reese would like to know.
Yeah, we wrote. You remember Sentinel? It came out after Exorcist and after The Omen. It was sort of a kind of a ripoff of those things. Sentinel was this girl moves into a big house that happens to be the gateway.
Yes, the Sentinel. Yes. I blanked on that. Yeah, I love the Sentinel.
Yeah, so we met with Blum ages ago, and this was shortly after Lee and Wan made all of their money, and so it was sort of the same model. And we had gone in, and they said, "Well, what do you want to do?" And we first said Prince of Darkness because it's the Universal catalog, and we were like, "Oh, we want to, what would you like to take from the Universal catalog and remake?" And we were like, "Prince of Darkness," and they were like, "Yeah." I mean, we went down that road for a bit, and they were like, "Yeah, there's some rights issues that like everybody and their grandma owns a little bit of that movie, so that was going to be a miss." So then we were like, what about Sentinel? And they were like, oh yeah, they do that. And so we worked on the Sentinel. And the great thing about Blumhouse, and Blumhouse was, even though they had made $1 billion, they were in the middle of, I think it was Paramount at the time, but it was like they were in a trailer at Paramount, and it was, it was not impressive. Mm-hmm. But they were allowing you as a writer to, make your movies. I mean, you could do whatever you want. And what was great about it is Jason would be in the meetings, and he would be like, oh, okay, well, let's get this place. Let's get this location. Let's do this. Like, he was constantly on the move. And in the end, we couldn't make a deal financially. Mm. And so their model was a little different back then. It's not like that now. But so we didn't go down the road with them. But look, I'm very happy with them, and I wish them absolute best. And we were still close to a bunch of the guys over there, Cooper, and by the way, I think, I could be wrong. I have no idea what went on behind the scenes, but knowing Ryan Turek for the years that I've known him, there's no doubt in my mind that Halloween is a much better movie because he's there. And I mean, he is from as long as, from back when he was at the website. I mean, he loved the genre. I mean, he grew up loving the genre. He loved the genre more than I did. I mean, he lived horror. He still lives horror. So I have full faith that the next Halloween movies will be better because he's there.
This is the last thing, and then we're going to wrap it up here. Jess Graham says, Todd, thank you. Fun, interesting interview. Money aside, it's got to be cool to know that you are a pretty big part of a franchise that will probably be around forever in film history.
That was Jess?
That was Jess, yes.
Thank you, Jess. That's very kind of you to say. Yeah. As untrue as it may be, very kind.
Well, Todd, man, I just want to thank you so much. We've been going for almost 3 hours now, and
it feels like 10 minutes.
Well, thank you.
Not to the listeners, to us.
But man, I really appreciate the time. I appreciate the everything, man. This was so much fun.
And hey, let's do it again. I mean, we're Kentucky brothers.
Sure, absolutely, anytime.
You let me know.
Anytime, brother. Well, again, thank you so much, man. You're awesome. I really, when I wrote up all these notes, and I was like, God, I've got too much here. He's going to be like, dude, let me go. After an hour, dude. Just...
Fine.
But yeah, I really appreciate it, man. And everybody who tuned in, thank you guys so much for watching. Yeah, a lot of great questions, and it's been a great chat. And yeah, so thank you guys for tuning in. I really appreciate it. And let's see. Let me give a couple of shout outs here. Rock Music Forever 90, Joe McKenzie, Jess, Zombie, Aiden, Kevin Dudley, Anthony Jordan, Aaron Lewis, Joe Reese, Robert Long, Roland 666, Joe McKenzie, Sean Blevins, my buddy Lorne, Sebian Segal, Jamie, Unicorn Thug,
Unicorn and Thug together again? That's great.
Unicorn Thug, yeah. Longtime viewer of mine. Love the Unicorn Thug. Nico, thank you, Nico. Thank you for the super chat also, Nico. I appreciate that. Thank you for the super chat. I believe that was Toronto Freddy. Thank you. Very kind of you. Over on Twitch, Scary Jerry, JLC, that's me, Jamie. Big Crack Rock, Mr. Shatsy, Carpe Horror, Killer Cutie, Kevin Smythe. Thank you guys for all tuning in tonight. It was a lot of fun. And yeah, we'll have to do it again very soon. So,
yes.
But thank you, Todd. I appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Take care. Stay safe. Stay healthy. And,
I will.
Yeah, we'll do it again sometime soon, hopefully.
See you guys.
Later, buddy. Take care. All right. So there you go. There was the conversation with Todd Farmer. It was a lot of fun, and yeah, I appreciate you guys tuning in. If you've not dropped a like on the YouTube stream, please do so. I would certainly appreciate it. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. And you guys had some great questions. I appreciate that. Appreciate you guys, everybody who hung in for the entire stream. We've been going for almost 3 hours. And again, huge thanks to Mr. Farmer. He did the whole thing standing up also. Standing up. So, he is the man. I will be rescheduling the live stream with Eric Freeman very soon. We had to postpone that one, but we'll get that one rescheduled in the very, very near future, I promise. And I'm working on another stream very similar to the one tonight with Mr. Farmer with a couple of people. So that is something that is also definitely in the works. And I actually just got a message from Todd that said, "You are a fantastic host. Thank you for having me." So very kind of him. He's such a nice guy. Super, super nice guy. So yeah, keep your eyes peeled for the upcoming stream with Eric Freeman. We're going to get that one worked out very soon. The other stream that I was mentioning earlier with two very awesome guests, we're looking at the first week of August to do that one. That one will be a lot of fun. Tomorrow night, we are revealing the new name of the sausage factory. So be sure to tune in for that. Also, we're going to reveal kind of how we're going to do things in the future. And yeah, so a lot of cool stuff on the horizon. And hopefully very soon I'll be able to tell you guys all about my contributions to the upcoming Friday the 13th collection box set. So yeah. But again, thanks so much for tuning in. I'm gonna play you guys out with some awesome tracks from Christian Hanna. So take care, stay safe, stay healthy, and until next time, have a great one. Peace.
Wherever the red dot goes, you bang.
Jason belongs in hell, and I'm gonna see that he gets there. Wake up, middle of the night, screaming my brains out. Get high, middle of the afternoon. No way, can't stop thinking about you. It's just my nightmare, one lavish nightmare. You call me animal, that's just not the truth. I'm no animal, no animal with you, no animal. Whoa, I'm no animal, no animal with you, no It's just my nightmare, one lavish nightmare. You call me an animal, but that's just not the truth. I'm no animal, no animal with you, no animal. Whoa, I'm no animal, no animal with you, no
Alright, streamers, you know what time it is. Keep on pissing, baby.